Welcome to the April 27th, 6:30 p.m. City Council meeting. We do have a quorum, so I'll call this meeting to order. Would you please join me in a moment of silence? And the pledge to the flag. City Clerk, would you please read the rules to speak?
Yes. Individuals wishing on public and non-public hearing agenda items must complete a sign-up card and present it to the clerk prior to the item being introduced. Those wishing to speak on quasi-judicial public hearings must complete a sign-up card and sign the oath. Sign-up and oath cards are available on the table in the council chamber. Individuals wishing to speak on non-agenda items may do so under petitions from the public press. This opportunity is offered twice, and individuals may speak at either the first or second petitions, but not both. No sign-up card is required. Citizens shall not comment on any issue more than once during the meeting. All comments except petitions and requests must address the pending issue, and citizens will be given 3 minutes to speak. Citizens wishing to speak on the consent agenda must submit a comment card identifying the items of interest. Speakers shall be given 3 minutes per item. However, citizens wishing to speak on more than 3 consent agenda items shall be limited to speak for a total of 10 minutes, regardless of the number of items identified.
Thank you, City Clerk. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of January 26th?
I'd move to.
Go ahead.
Did you? Oh, okay. I'd move to approve the minutes of the regular city council meeting on January 26, 2021.
I have a motion.
Second.
And Member Jordan seconds. May I have a roll call vote?
Member Robinson.
Yes.
Member Jordan.
Yes.
Mayor Diesel.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nelson. Member Stokel.
Yes.
Thank you, City Manager.
Yes, sir. We're on item, no special recognitions, item 5. We are on boards and commission, item 6A. This is the Student Advisory Annual Report. The 2020-2021 Student Advisory Council Annual Report, including the recommendations and goals for the 2021-22 will be presented. No action is required by council. Student Advisory Council, it's all yours.
Come on up. Your name and address for the record, please. Not used to that. You can go ahead.
All right. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jacob Phillips. I'm from Titusville High School, and I'm in 11th grade. All right. The 2020-2021 Student Advisory Council expresses its appreciation to Mayor Daniel Diesel, Vice Mayor Joe Lynn Nelson, and Council members Robert Jordan, Joe Robinson, and Sarah Stokel for their continued support and encouragement. We also express our appreciation to City Manager Scott Larice, Astronaut High School Advisor Christina Serrato, North Brevard Homeschool Association Advisor Kathy Gutman, Titusville High School Advisor Michael Triandafils, City Staff Liaison Caitlin Rodriguez, and other city staff that provided our council with guidance in its decision-making process. The 2020-2021 Student Advisory Council members include, from Astronaut High School, Co-Chair Taylor Batson, Sr., Member Emily Ellis, Jr., and Secretary Savannah Seaver, Sophomore. From North Brevard Homeschool Association, Co-Chair Isaac Gutman, Sr., Vice Chair Ben Hamilton, Jr., Member Aaliyah Dymicki, Sophomore, and Member Edie Pringle, Freshman. From Titusville High School, Co-Chair Caleb Phillips, Sr., Member Jacob Phillips, Jr., Member Aiden Spare, Sophomore, and Member Richie Dobbs, Freshman. In accordance with Resolution Number 1-2017, the Student Advisory Council is to discuss, research, and prioritize 2 to 4 concerns or issues to be presented annually to City Council. Proposed solutions for further discussion or action. The mission of the Student Advisory Council is to encourage involvement of young people in community affairs and create an awareness of their rights and responsibilities as citizens of Titusville. This year, the Council held 6 regular meetings, with a few meetings being canceled for health and safety reasons due to the COVID-19 pandemic. During 2020-2021, our council undertook the planning of the following projects for the following term due to the limitations with the pandemic. The first is to participate in the Florida League of Cities Youth Photography Competition. The second is to participate in the Florida League of Cities Youth Community Service Competition by planning an event to host in the fall of 2021. The third is to initiate completing the draft script to update the 2008 Last Dance prom video. And finally, to begin the planning process to host a youth leadership seminar in the spring of 2022. Thank you.
Well, first of all, your plans are well presented, well planned, but I got to say, you do quite a presentation. That
Thank
was
you.
well done, well read, and man, you're going to do something. Council Member Robinson.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's no problem. Okay then. Well, thank you for the presentation, and keep up the good work, and I look forward to seeing what you do next year. Outstanding presentation, sir.
Thank you.
City Manager.
Yes, sir. On to item 6B, which is the Student Advisory Council scholarships. Award scholarships to two seniors, Caleb Phillips of Titusville High School and Isaac Gutman of the North Brevard Home School Association. Each one of these scholarships is $1,000 each.
Okay, thank you. Before I do that, were there others? Did I interject? Okay, so how many of you will be coming up? That's awesome. It's going to be hard to top him, but I wasn't instructed that way, so I don't know if you have an order or not, but we will interject there because there are more presentations.
Yes, sir.
And with my apologies for not realizing that, step up and let's go. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I am Savannah Seaver, and I am the SAC Secretary as well as the Astronaut High School Sophomore Representative. The 2020-2021 Student Advisory Council decided to compete in the 2021 Florida League of Cities Youth Photo Competition. Savannah Seaver, SAC Secretary, and the Sophomore Representative from Astronaut High School submitted a photograph that was taken on the Wildlife Refuge Drive in Titusville. The photo was supposed to represent something we love about our community. This represented something unique about Titusville and the diversity in our natural community. Caleb Phillips, co-chairperson and senior representative from Titusville High School, also submitted a photograph to the competition. His photo highlighted the scenic views of the Kennedy Space Center and a short essay on what he thought made Titusville such a great and unique place to live. While neither one of our photographs won the competition, it was a successful project as we got to think about the best parts of our city that represent who we are as citizens here. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
I see none. Another outstanding presentation.
Thank you,
I
guys.
do now. You got me late. Vice Mayor Nelson.
This is short. Good photos.
Thank you.
Those were nice.
Thank you very much.
And thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank
Next
you.
up.
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Leah Dimeke, and I'm the sophomore representative for MBHSA. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, goals for the 2020 to 2021 Student Advisory Council were never formalized by last year's council. Although we started meeting for the first time in September 2020, most of these goals and projects were never officially decided upon until January, as the council was suspended from meeting from November to January 2021 due to Brevard Public Schools COVID guidelines. On February 16, 2021, the Student Advisory Council decided to plan an event for the 2021-2022 Student Advisory Council. This event, called Earthwise, will be hosted by the Student Advisory Council for the purpose of developing, motivating, educating, and activating our community to reduce littering, recycle, beautify, and sustain the environment for the benefit of Titusville. One of the goals of our council was to participate in the 2021 Youth Council Community Service Contest. Earthwise was submitted for this contest in March 2021. And some recommendations the Student Advisory Council had for this event were to create a timeline and brainstorm ideas for the participants of the event, to have a guest speaker, and to select a date and early planning so it does not interfere with extracurricular activities. Thank you.
Very good. I do have a question only because you kind of mentioned it. Are you all, as a group, able to get together yet?
We would have to obviously plan based on where Brevard County is with the COVID-19 virus and make sure that we're meeting safely and within the guidelines.
Have y'all been able to do any Zoom meetings or anything like that? Or right now you're just kind of?
Right now, we are meeting in person.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Good. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation.
thank you.
And I'm sure you guys know who's next. And if you don't, you'll push the other guy next to you.
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Edie Pringle, and I'm the freshman representative for NBHSA. So 15 years ago, the Student Advisory Council started a campaign to make youth aware of the catastrophic events of drinking and driving. Some key efforts put forth by our council on the anti-drinking and driving theme over the years have included completion of the Last Dance anti-drinking prom video in the 2008 to 2009 SAC term. We received a $2,000 donation from State Farm Insurance in 2009 and 2010, which has provided us with a bountiful amount of money in SAC savings for future events. And we held a leadership seminar on anti-drinking and driving in 2012. So in 2019 and 2020, our council made many advancing steps in the continuation of this project. This year, the council made the amazing step of actually beginning the process of creating an updated version of the 2008 Last Dance prom video. The theme, excuse me.
No worries.
In the 2020-2021 year, due to the pandemic, this project was put on hold. In its current stage, the script for the reshooting of the video is almost complete and will be ready to be reviewed and approved by the 2021-2022 Student Advisory Council in August. The next steps for this project will be planning with the City of Titusville staff member, Mr. Curtis Corwin, to shoot the project as well as create the effects needed. On its current track, it should be close to completion at the end of the next school year. One of our recommendations was to continue to improve the Drink Drive Die webpage and complete the update of the 2008 Last Dance prom video. You guys have any questions?
I see none. I will say, again, solid presentation, but your subject matter, the target that you're going after, I used to be the sponsor for SAD, Students Against Driving Drunk, and the dance and we have to have a prom fashion show. Important. It's important. And so when you get your teeth into that, you're really getting into something. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Next.
Hello.
Hey.
I'm Ben Hamilton. I'm the MBHSA representative. I'm the junior representative.
Okay.
I'm also the vice chair.
Very good.
So I'm talking about the initiative to plan the planning process to host a youth leadership seminar in the spring of 2022. So the Student Advisory Council began brainstorming ways to host a youth leadership seminar with accommodating the COVID-19 guidelines should this be necessary. The ideas from the 2020/2021 Student Advisory Council was to plan a youth leadership seminar in the spring of 22 that would focus on the city of Titusville's growth as well as the ecosystem. The goal was to host is to host an in-person youth leadership seminar, but we have plans to move to a virtual platform if we have to. As for recommendations for this project, we want to continue hosting the leadership seminar during the future Student Advisory Council terms. Also, during the early stages of planning, we want to do our best to keep the date selected so that it doesn't conflict with things such as extracurricular activities like sports and music and etc. Third, we want to refine the program's timeline or fill in other activities into the day's schedule to avoid students standing around with nothing to do during the activities. That's it.
Very good.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions from council? I've seen a nice presentation, and I listened to every report, and I realized that you, like everybody else, got caught up into the COVID stuff, and you're just trying to get back up on the diving board and make it happen.
Yes,
So
sir.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
All right.
Next.
Good evening, Council. I'm Caleb Phillips. I'm the senior from Titusville High School and one of the co-chairs. So in summary, tonight, as prescribed by the City of Titusville Resolution Number 12017, the Student Advisory Council must discuss and prioritize 2 or 4 concerns or issues each year. For this reason, this year's Student Advisory Council suggests the following goals to be forwarded to the 2021-2022 Student Advisory Council for their consideration and implementation. Host the Community Service Earthwise event in the fall of 2021. Improve the drinkdrivedie.com webpage and initiated related projects such as continuing to update the 2008 The Last Dance prom video, and host a youth leadership seminar in the spring of 2022. The council would like to reach out and thank you for the support that City Council has given us, as well as encourage next year's council to continue doing the good work.
Thank you very much. I see no questions. I like your goals, and I like the organization with which you have formed them and the timeframes, and that's how things get done. Click them off as you go. So thank you very much for your presentation. Thank all of you for your presentations. You know, I guess this is my 5th year of hearing those, and those were really pretty darn professional. I mean, really well done. So with that, thank you very much. And is there anything else we need to do with that, City Manager?
No, sir.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that and accept your report. And just so you know, you don't have to stay here for the next 2 or 3 hours. So thank you. In the world of schooling, I say dismissed, but anyway, thank you very much. Bye. Oh, well, no. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. On to 6B, which is the award of 2 scholarships to 2 seniors, Caleb Phillips of Titusville High School and Isaac Gutman from the North Brevard Home School Association. Each one of the awards is for $1,000.
All right, take 3.
Yes, sir. On to 6C, which is the Student Advisory Council membership appointments. Recommended that the proposed slate of students be confirmed and appointed to the 2021-2022 Student Advisory Council as selected and appointed by the prospective schools in accordance with Resolution 1-2017. The names of those slated are in your packet for approval.
Okay, council, any comments? Any cards? Okay, then we need a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the slate of Student Advisory Council membership for 2021-2022.
I have a motion.
Second.
Vice Mayor has a second. Roll call vote.
Member Jordan,
Yes.
Mayor Diesel,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nelson, Member Stokel,
Yes.
Member Robinson.
Yes. Very good. Motion passes unanimously. So move forward.
On to item 6D is the Titusville Housing Authority semi-annual report. As no actions required, you're to accept the report.
Do we need a vote on accepting that?
No, sir.
Okay, well, then we will move on. Council, is there any questions about that report? I see no questions. We will move on and we accept.
On to 6E is accept the resignation of regular member Earl Johnson Jr. of the Board of Adjustment and Appeals with an unexpired term to expire on January 31st, 2021. His resignation was effective on April 16th, 2021.
Council, any comments, questions, or concerns? I see none. Any cards on this? I need a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the resignation of regular member Earl Johnson Jr.
Member Jordan has made the motion.
Second.
I have a second from Vice Mayor. Roll call vote.
Mayor Diesel,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nelson,
Yes.
Member Stokel,
Yes.
Member Robinson,
Yes.
Member Jordan.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously on to F.
Oops, on to 6F is the North Brevard Library District Board. The North Brevard Library District Board semi-annual report is included in your agenda packet. No action is required on this item.
Okay, we move on to the next item 7, petitions and requests from the public. Petitions and requests from the public. And Stan, we'll see if the yellow light works.
All right, buddy.
All right, man.
Stan Johnston, 860 Poinsett Avenue. I'm speaking to you about an email that I sent you today. It's titled Cities and Florida Today, Today's Dishonesty, and a $100 reward for you, that's anybody here, anybody on TV, to get city manager or a city council member to meet with us. $100. Don't be a fool like I have been. Judge me face to face rather than cowardly behind my back. That's the title. It's a long title. And this is to, this thing is sent to some pastors, elders, and so forth, some church members, because I'm getting no response from council members. That's why I'm offering $100. I have been for 18 months to anybody who can get a, and we're talking about communication here. Can't brag about communication when you have a closed door policy like Mr. Larice has started. And so this closed door policy that the council members has is, well, it doesn't work good for communication. So I'm offering anybody $100 if we can get that moving. I've also offered $1,000 for anybody who can get me this report that cost the city $70,000 that has reviewed my correspondence from 2012 to 2019. Cost the city $70,000 and said that I'm nothing but a worthless, incompetent engineer. Well, unfortunately, nobody can find the report. So I'm offering anybody $1,000 to find that report. No apologies about it or anything, but it's still a continuing issue now for, what, over 2 years. So I'd like something to do it. I'll read this to you. It says, for more than, this is from the letter. It says, for more than 18 months, I continue to offer anyone $100 to set up an hour meeting with a council member. But there's no takers because of the truth, the fear of the truth, and the necessary termination of our dishonest city manager, big time. Furthermore, it says, so what do you think? Are you a fool? Have we been hustled? I dare you to talk to a council member or the Florida Today. I dare you to seek the $100 reward. I dare you to seek and to tell the truth. I dare you to judge me face to face rather than cowardly behind my back. And that's what's been going on for quite a while. So I'm asking for more time to share with you what the heck is going on. At least I got a yellow warning light this time, didn't I? So please comment on this because there's a lot of problems that are scams, hoaxes, and frauds that I've written to you about. So you've got that. It's part of public record.
Thanks, Dan.
I'm ready for your questions.
All right, City Manager, we move to the consent agenda.
Yes, sir. Council, are there any council members that would like to pull any of the consent agenda items?
Mr. Manager, I'd like to pull 8A.
8 what now? I'm sorry.
8A.
8A.
Am I not speaking English or what? Yeah.
I'd like to pull item D.
D?
Okay.
Clerk, are there any cards on any of the consent agenda items?
Yes, sir. We have one individual that has signed up to speak on 7 items.
Mayor and council, with your permission, I'd like to read the titles for consent agenda for the record.
Thank you.
Consent agenda item 8A is approve the award for Sandpoint Park Management Evaluation. Consent agenda item B, approve the purchase of replacement vehicles for water resources. Consent agenda item 8C, approve the award from Brevard Emergency Medical Services Grant Award and associated budget amendment approval. Consent agenda item 8D, approve the purchase of the replacement pump and panel purchase for Vector Space Lift Station. Consent agenda item 8E, approve the award of work order for engineering programming services for the Blue Heron Water Reclamation Facility. Consent agenda item 8F, approve resolution 14-2021, approving the temporary closure of state roads for special event at Titusville High School graduation. Consent agenda item 8G, approve amendment number 1 to the State Revolving Loan Fund, agreement DW050331. Consent agenda item 8H, approve resolution 15-2021, urging the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to remove the suspension on cruise ship operations from Port Canaveral. Consent agenda item 8I, accept and approve engagement letter from bond counsel Rhonda Bond Collins Esquire. And the two items that were pulled by the city council are items 8A and 8D.
Thank you, City Manager. We would move to the council pullings. Member Jordan on 8A.
Yeah, this one concerns me, and this is the Sandpoint Park Pond Management Evaluation. There you are. I need some explanation because I believe we're going down a path that, in my mind, it's not making any sense to me. So first of all, can you explain to me what the functionality of the pond is supposed to be?
So in the basics, a wet stormwater pond, it takes flow from a ditch or from a pipe, in the case of Sandpoint Park, and it gives an area for the water to slow down. It gives an area for and time for sediment to settle out from the rainstorm. And then it also provides an area and time for microbiological activity to remove nutrients and other pollutants from the rainwater moving through.
And the whole functionality, in what I think, I liken it to an aquarium. If you've got, this aquarium starts out a little dirty, but if you just let it settle, then all the bad stuff tends to go down to the bottom where the rocks are, and usually you have some kind of fuel. And as long as you don't disturb that, if there's no turbulence or anything, then that sediment will stay down there. Is that correct?
That is correct. And one of the other things I'd like to add too is that the time that the water spends in the pond, it's called the reaction time. That's also related to the volume of the pond. And so the way that you can tell whether a pond is effective or not is based on the volume that the pond currently holds. Okay, and so over time, that pond will fill up with sediment and will reduce the volume of the pond. It will reduce the time for the reaction and will reduce the effectiveness of the pond over time.
But based on the design of the pond that we are talking about for this study, first of all, how old is that pond?
So the two ponds within Sandpoint Park were built at different times. The west pond, and that is the one that runs in a north-south orientation right next to US 1. That pond was built about 20 years ago. The pond downstream of there, which we refer to as the East Pond, which runs in an east-west orientation next to Max Brewer, that was built about 10 years ago.
Okay. And this study is for both ponds or one pond?
This study will look at both ponds.
Okay, so if we've got those two ponds, in your experience, I know there, because of different situations, ponds are going to feel differently. If you've got a lot of sediment, or I should say contaminants coming in, then it'll take that pond a lot less time to fill up than one that doesn't have a lot going on. Right. So in your experience, have we ever had a problem where the functionality of the ponds were not working for this prescribed requirements?
I'm not aware of any, but at this point, I don't know of any.
So what do you know of any ponds in Brevard County that has gone through any kind of,
I don't know enough about the ponds in Brevard County to give you a good answer on that.
have we ever done a study like this before?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Has there ever been a reason to do a study like this?
In my experience, I have not done this before.
So the only way to find out if a pond functionality is not operating per design is to do what, the study?
Do the study, and the simple measure is to find out how much sediment is in the pond. And a simple rule of thumb is that if 50% of the effective volume is now filled in with sediment, that it's time to dredge. So in simple terms, if you have a 6-foot deep pond when you built it, and now it's 3 feet deep, it's time to take action.
But that's one of my challenges, because what you just described was to do a measurement of dirt, or dirty dirt, if you will. It's stuff, and it's $41,000, and that just concerns me to no end, especially since I just don't get why we're now, when the ponds are basically doing what they're supposed to, and actually one pond goes into another pond, correct?
That's correct.
So you actually have double the capacity, if I'm thinking right.
Yes.
Right? So.
Yes, they run in series.
And the water, and even if one pond is full, I shouldn't say full, but even 3/4 full, there's still that area where it's still settling, and once it reaches a certain capacity as far as the height of the water is concerned, it's going to just spill over to the second pond, correct?
That's correct.
And then it has time again to do the settlement, before it goes into the.
It will, but as those ponds fill, their effectiveness is reduced.
So you think this is a good idea for us to be doing this?
I think it is. Yeah, I think we need to see. I know we made a commitment to a number of folks to look at this, and I think it's worthwhile to see. There's some other work that will be done within this study that will also look at not only the amount of material that's on the bottom, but also the potential for that material to release nutrients back into the water column.
Okay, so let me be a devil's advocate then. So if we do the study and they come back and say that these ponds are 1/4 full or 3/4 full of sediment, what's the next step?
Well, if the study comes back and says it's 1/4 full of sediment, then we could set a plan for, with the West Ponds case, in another 20 years, it would need to be dredged. And then the East Pond, we would say in another 10 years, that would need to be dredged. If the study comes back and says that it's 3/4 full, then the general rule of thumb is that we should probably dredge it.
Did we not see any of the sediment when we had the spill out?
We pumped the ponds down low, but we didn't get down to the bottom. And really, it's the comparison between the current level of sediment compared to the original design.
Right.
Yeah.
So we do have the depth of what the pond was designed for and all of that. So,
Yes, we have as-built.
Right. So this engineering firm, they're going to go out there, and how are they going to measure? How they measure this?
It's termed as a bathymetric survey. And so I'm not exactly sure how they're going to do it, but they will have elevations associated with the top of bank. They will have the original depths of the ponds. They'll set up control and then measure down to where the sediment is.
$41,000 worth. I really have a problem with this cost, but I also have a problem with results of this. And you're saying that it may be another. If you come out with a study and the results is, well, it looks like it's got another 5 years before it reaches the capacity where it needs to be dredged, or you got another 10 years. We'll know that. That may be the answer.
Yes, and then we can get an estimate, and then we'll be able to do capital planning for that rehabilitation.
And the cost of dredging, you have any idea what it costs to clean out a pond?
I have no idea, and that's why we're doing this study, because part of the preliminary engineering report that they will prepare for us will have a preliminary opinion of probable construction costs.
So once we get that and find that it's $2 or $3 million to dredge one of these ponds or both of these ponds, where do you get that money? I mean, is that part of operating? No, I'm serious. Is that part of operating, or is that something?
I would say something of that size, it would be a capital project.
Capital, which means we have
Yes.
to borrow money to
I'm
clean
sure
it,
we
right?
would look at all avenues for funding.
Okay. All right, I guess, Council, my challenge that I have with this one is the fact that it is functioning now. We, of course, I don't think this would ever have come up if we didn't have the spill that has occurred. But I asked a question about when we did have to make that separate dam, if you will, so we can fill the thing. I would have thought that staff would have seen some concern at that time as far as what the silt level or thing like that is. So when you have a pond and then you have a second pond that this sediment is going into, it seems like we've got options for any more years for what the functionality is. It is certainly continuing to work like it's supposed to. Use $41,000 of the people's money to do a study on this thing, and then you probably won't be able to do another 10, 12 years. I just don't think it's the right thing, my personal opinion, to be spending this money for something that I don't think is a problem right now. I think we are looking for a problem when they're really, but that's just my opinion. And of course, the only way to answer that, you can go and get a study, and then you find out that I was right. So you can either listen to me and say it didn't cost anything, or you can go ahead and do the study and spend $41,000. We would not, and this is what I can get my head around, we would not even be talking about this unless we had that spill. Now that we've had the spill, of course, people want us to do certain things. And if Sean is right, I don't really remember, and I can be totally wrong because I am getting old. I don't know if we did say that we would do the study. Can anybody tell me if we said we would do the study or not? Nobody saying anything. I don't remember us saying that.
We discussed options at council for what we would do. BMAPs are being considered, which we haven't brought those to you yet, but this was one of the options that we had suggested as part of the presentation, yes.
Or is there any other option besides spending $41,000? I know you can say not do anything, but I'm saying, is there anything else that we can do to at least get a general idea of where the depth of the silt is?
No, I don't know any other way to find out.
So you could not take a GoPro camera and look and see what the silt is below the surface? Question.
I wouldn't know how to measure that. And I would also not like to take on the liability, because I'm not an expert at this, to understand what is considered sediment. Because, as you would go down, it would start as a light flock and then would get thicker as you go down. So I'm not sure where you would even start to measure and what would count and not. So.
I just would suggest, council, that we find other options before we go and spend $40 on something like this. There's got to be other technologies out there that would be a lot cheaper than spending that kind of money for a problem that I don't think we would even be talking about if it wasn't for the skill bit.
I would add, excuse me, before the leak, and I'm not saying this was city related necessarily, but I attended a seminar, workshop by, I believe it was an FIT professor. And I'm not 100% sure that's where she was from. This goes back, but this does bring the point up that Laura Lee hosted it at Sandpoint, and there was, a good number of people there. And there was talk at that time, before any of this came up, that dredging stormwater ponds is, doesn't happen like they'd like to see it happen. Let's face it. But it's definitely a positive when it comes to the environment. But this sort of study gives you an idea if you need to do that, because as I understand it, dredging a stormwater pond is way into the 6 digits. I could be wrong on that, but I believe it's quite expensive. So I think 41,000 to kind of get a baseline. This was kind of, I won't say it was in a discussion with the city, but I will say there was certainly a concerned group of citizens that was meeting about at least investigating the possibility of that before any of this happened. So I didn't just come up because I did go to that seminar several months beforehand, and there was talk, and I was actually trying to understand the same questions you had, quite honestly. Why would you do this? What does it do? How many people do this? Quite honestly, it doesn't seem like dredging stormwater ponds takes place very often. The main reason you would do that is if it gets too shallow, and then you've got to get it a little deeper. So with that, I believe Member Stokel.
Yep, thank you. So my understanding is I feel like the biggest concern here is we're worried about potential pollutants into the lagoon. Would that be accurate statement?
That's correct.
Okay, so because I was kind of like, Member Jordan was saying, I was like, why are we spending 41,000? And then I started like just thinking about it, like questioning, what are we currently doing? So with our stormwater ponds now, how do we know what's going into the lagoon, or right now with our current practices?
I would probably let Kevin answer that.
Okay.
I'm no longer in charge of stormwater, and I know we do monitoring, but I appreciate Kevin to share his viewpoints.
Well, in Riverside, the process of making the TMDLs developed a model. So that model takes all the land use from the break line that's mid-city 405 area to the east. We know all the land uses, what year things were built, and the model simulates how much those properties generate nitrogen and phosphorus. So we know out of each outfall what they generate. Include Sandpoint, we have a model that says it generates so many pounds of nitrogen a year. Then we have projects that have brought baffle boxes on top of those to eliminate the contributions to the river. So the BMATs that have been referenced to Sandpoint, they bring the nitrogen and phosphorus down a percentage based on how much is harvested. They're very effective. We just put them in Dre last week. But yeah, that's how we know what goes into it. We do monitor projects to see front side, back side of a baffle box, or Dre field, we know what came out the pipe goes out the other pipe. So there are monitoring to give you exact numbers that's a snapshot in time based upon how much it rained. The model gives you kind of the ideal world. It tells you what the project is going to benefit. That's what all of our goals are based on. The 60,000 pounds reduction, those things are based on it's called a SWIL model. It takes land use into account, generates how much pollution is created by the lake.
So would it be beneficial to have, if we're going to be looking at the consulting to come in for this particular situation, could the same be true for looking at all of our stormwater ponds to see if, or do we have the capacity, essentially, do we have the capacity right now to monitor effectively? Because it makes me feel like we don't, which is why we're having the consultant come in for this particular situation. Would that not be applicable to the other stormwater ponds as well?
But I don't think this scope would match what the other ones would be looking at because it has the uniqueness of the sewer leak there. So take Senior Center, for example. Senior Center is much bigger. We wouldn't expect to see an impact at Senior Center for decades at all. It was built in the last 10 years. I wouldn't expect it to silt in for a very long time because it is a massive project with 2 wetlands feeding to it, a little more protected. We don't maintain a lot of wet ponds. I think we have the numbers around 9 total that are under city maintenance. Most wet ponds are under privately maintained properties, not city maintained. Most of our ponds are dry, as are the bulk of the private dry. They aren't subject to the same issues. Obviously, you can see it. But I would say that for a wet pond, when we saw flooding issues, it would be because the permanent pool was being impacted, and we would know quickly, obviously, the pond's not operating. That's not related to water quality. That's the quantity of water can't push into the pond anymore, and we would be able to address that. So, but this scope of work is a little different. It has a little more complexity because dredging is contemplated. The price of dredging comes into effect. There's a little bit of luck review, where if you just did a bathymetric survey, which is just a surveyor going out and literally measuring the depth at various points in a pond to see how it compares, that may be more the maintenance side long term.
Okay, and then last question, is dredging part of our plan right now for certain stormwater ponds in the future, depending on age and?
We haven't put dredging in our plans. Honestly, when we looked at dredging in general, if you look at what the county expends on the river, it's tens of millions of dollars. Some of our ponds just would be barges and cranes. You're talking about $1 million dredge project. The utility collects about $2.5 million a year, so those would be impactful. We have not run into a circumstance where wet pond has come up as needing dredging. We've done more clearing of debris, like Dre was clearing all the vegetation. So our current plan does not involve dredging. In the 5-year window, we don't have a dredge project planned internal to the city. External, Sabre Lagoon does have one. It's not going to come into a stormwater pond. That's going to be in the river itself.
Okay.
So no, we don't have, in the 5-year window that we look at, we don't have a dredging project sitting there.
Okay. So we focus more so on the other things like cleaning up the debris, those type. Okay.
I'm not going to say we couldn't see a flood issue come up where we would have to do something. A full-on dredge, probably not, but a repair of a nature that we do with our staff, maybe digging out the volume needed. But I can't think of a pond that's really in an area that we see so much sediment come to it right now that we'd have that impact.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Member Robinson.
Yes. Is there any recommended time with the quality or the quantity of water that a pond receives that you should look at dredging in?
I did some research prior to the meeting, and all of the guidance talks about that there are too many variables to give a benchmark of time. It's all based on the amount of rain. It's based on the size of the basin, based on the size and design of the pond. So really, the only way to know whether or not it needs dredging is to measure the sediment levels.
Right, and at least if we had the measurement done or the process done, we would have some guidelines that we could go by.
Yes, I think the simple metric is that when the pond becomes half full with sediment, then it is time to clean it out. So if you could get a relative amount of sediment that had been collected over the age of the pond, you could project when and if it was needed to dredge.
So that knowing that we had the big spill in December, January timeframe, the liquid or the solids is what goes to the heavy pond. How many, do you have any idea of how many, the weightage or the pounds of solid that went into that pond?
No, I don't.
But we know that it was quite a bit.
It was a large spill, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Vice Mayor.
I guess this is for Kevin. With the Save Our Lagoon Fund, if we had to dredge or had to take action, we use that for this project because the water is going into the Indian River.
I don't know. We'd have to explore that. The only dredging I know of that's in the plan is the Pacific Lagoon was developed by Tetra Tech in the county that encompassed a large number of projects. And what all of the action you see us do is we're substituting our projects for what they plan.
Okay.
The only dredging projects were river level projects, and they were, tens of millions of dollars. So obviously, dredging the river is a lot different from dredging a pond.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Can't say you can't because we got money to harvest growth. They've never give that money. Now we're doing it. 2 other cities are doing as well. So I wouldn't say you couldn't, but a lot of it is the benefit generation. So I think what you'd have to look at, if we're looking at it from the benefit side, is what measure do you put in place benefits best? We know what BMATs and baffle boxes do. I can't say today what dredging would do because it's a lot about what the material in the ground is. Mm-hmm. And you dredge, it also stirs the material up, so your sediment becomes transportable. So there's some bad side of dredging too. Yeah. But I would think from a water quality standpoint, which is what the Civic looks at, we have measures, the BMATs being one. I think we offered up a couple things, but that will give water quality benefit probably greater than what dredging will. Okay. Dredging will probably come into effect if we start seeing a flooding issue, which that's a very small basin compared to most of our basins are 100 to 120 times bigger than this one. This is really limited basin. It just happens they were aesthetically pleasing for the park to go wet ponds as opposed to dry. They've been constructed that way, obviously. So they have a different function, but I don't think they're going to silt in the future. But we can explore that. We haven't looked at that because that's dredging really becomes a ballpark beyond it handling. We know what we can install to create water quality improvement.
And by doing this, we would actually figure out what, if anything, we need to do, correct?
Yeah, it would be able to show us if there is, it would definitively say whether or not the ponds need to be dredged. You know, if we put the metric at half of the permanent pool, which is it's not raining where the water's going to sit naturally, where a groundwater table sits.
Yeah.
We put the measures that we would know definitively, as was mentioned, if it's 3/4, that's different than if it's 10%. But yeah, without that metric or measure, we don't have a definitive. It does or does not need to be dredged for that purpose.
Okay. From my perspective, I'd rather know what we're dealing with, and worst comes to worst, 5 years from now, it needs dredging. I'd rather know now and plan for it than know in 5 years that, oh, by the way, in 2 months you need to dredge this. That's the way I look at it. And they may come up with some recommendations that may save us from having to go that far. So hopefully that I prefer to do that than, like I said, I prefer to do that. I don't like surprises. So,
I do.
We'll conclude this discussion with Member Jordan.
All right. I appreciate the conversation and everything. I am not convinced because of the fact that when we had the spill, we were doing testing. And if we were doing testing, we actually said that the water quality was good that we were letting out to the lagoon. Isn't that correct? We actually decided that when it was time for us to say, okay, we've done enough aeration, we've done everything we need to do to get the quality back to where it was pre-spill.
Yes, the recent water quality data that we have shows that nutrient levels are very low in the ponds. I will say, though, that the way that we have been operating those ponds is not normal because we have dammed them up and have also been pumping significant amounts of water out of there. So it is, I wouldn't say that it's under its natural operating scenario at the moment.
I don't know what you just said. Natural operating.
Okay, usually the dams aren't there, and so the
Right.
water flows much quicker from the stormwater system to the lagoon. But we've held that water for the past 3 months. So we have artificially increased the treatment capacity of those ponds
Right.
by holding it back.
Right.
So that was part of the purpose.
Right,
So-
because you gave it more time for the
Absolutely.
settlement to go down.
Absolutely.
where
We
it
wanted to make sure
belongs
that water
as
was
designed.
as clean as possible.
Well, you just made my case. So it just, in my mind, you got good water quality. Apparently, it's doing exactly what the specification asks us to do. And now we're asking to do a test for $41,000 when we already know that the water quality that is going into the Indian River is exactly what we want it to be or better, because we aerated, we did everything we were supposed to, or in my personal opinion, we did it longer than what we needed to, but we wanted to make sure that the water was clean enough to go into the Indian River. So now we want to do a study just to see what the depth of the sediment is, even though the ponds are doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, right? That's all I'm going to say. Thanks.
Some members Stokel
Sorry,
snuck in on me.
yes. Let me just clarify now because I'm a little confused after that. So I hear what Member Jordan's saying, but isn't the biggest issue the sediment of what's in there, that pond currently, and if the level is too high, even though the water quality is okay right now, once we do open up the dams and things start to go normally because of that sediment level, we could have an issue? Is that correct or no?
That is correct. Not only the sediment level, but also the material that is in the sediment. So part of this study will look at what happens to that sediment in relation to the water quality above it.
Okay.
So, and that's one of the other things. So that's what the term that you may have heard before is called Muck Flux. And it's the idea where you have high levels of nutrients bound in the sediments, and as the freshwater, stormwater moves across the top of the pond towards the lagoon, that difference in concentration between the cleaner stormwater on the top and the richer nutrient level on the bottom can actually drive some of those nutrients to rise up into the water column and be transported out to the interior lagoon.
Okay, so yeah, that's kind of, I was kind of like Member Jordan, honestly. In the beginning, I was like, I don't want to spend 41,000, but I feel like given our unique situation of what happened and what's in there right now, my concern would be over time, as things kind of go back to normal because of all that that's still there, we might have an issue. So I'm kind of in favor of it now.
All right, with that said, we had an agenda, not an agenda item, we had a consent agenda item pulled. We discussed it. Is there the possibility of making a motion to withdraw it, or we just move forward?
If you're going to vote on it this time, you would take a card on this item and vote.
Probably have to.
Well, we got a whole consent agenda, but I've still got one member Stokel pulled. Do I need to just stop on this one and we need to vote on this one, or are we going to vote on them separately?
I would vote on them separately.
Or can we vote on them all together? Discuss A and B, listen to the cards, and vote. Right.
Pull an item says that the public can put a card on an item before.
Well, now you've got the situation where somebody put a card in on 7 items and has their 10 minutes. Now what do we do?
Under the rules, yeah, they're 10 minutes, but if you pull an item like you did now for separate discussion and vote, they would get a card 3 minutes.
Can we have separate discussion? And I don't know what Member Jordan wants to do with this, but if we have separate discussion, does that facilitate that we have to have a separate vote, or we can just say, okay, we had discussion, I'm good?
The fact it was pulled would allow the.
All right. So we'll do this separate, and then we have to do Member Stokel's pull separate.
It sometimes a member will pull just for a question. When you have this discussion on the item, it looks like it's going to be a separate vote. So you would have a card. You could vote on them both later, but you would take a card on each item pulled for this.
Just for clarification, I wasn't planning on making a different motion or anything. I was just going to vote no for the thing.
Same with mine.
Yeah, so I don't know if we need a separate one.
I was wondering the same thing. Can we not just pull things to discuss them without having to take a vote?
You can, but typically you vote on consent in one vote.
And that's what we could still do after we have discussion on a couple, and then let citizens have their discussion and their cards. I don't think that has to change. Unless, of course, the person who pulled it said, well, I want a separate vote. Well, then I wouldn't argue about that, but it sounds to me like they're both just wanting to have discussed it instead of just letting it go without any discussion.
Yes, sir. Let me.
I would hope to think that just because someone says, I want to pull a consent agenda item for discussion, that doesn't mean we have to vote on it separately, I would hope.
I don't think Robert's rule.
Your consent agenda rules say if an item is withdrawn from consent agenda by council for further discussion, members of the public will be allowed 3 minutes to speak to that item.
Okay, well then we don't necessarily have to vote on it, but we still would pull a card on it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the rules. All right, so we pulled A. We discussed A. It looks to you, are you back up there?
I have one other question, and I'll be done. What Member Stokel said, she changed her mind, which I'm very unhappy about. But because she said it was all about, you're saying, Sean, that some of the material may float over because the sediment may be higher than what is designed for. So it's going to float. It may float over, or the contaminants may float over, right, to the next pond.
That's correct.
Right? And it's going to stay there and settle down because it's basically, in my mind, it is a second option, if you will, to make sure you get more sediment on the bottom before it goes out to the river.
It certainly could, but it also all depends on the volume of water going through there. So if we would take it to the extreme and think about a hurricane, that might be enough flow through the two ponds to transport it directly to the lagoon.
No, I understand what you're saying. On a normal day, what we usually have without storms or anything like that, there is time for the sediment to bottom as designed.
I would think so, but since this certainly is a special case, I would like some surety, and that's why we have recommended.
You know, you're not helping me.
I know
You
I know
realize
I'm
that,
not.
right?
That's
Okay.
why. Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. I've made my case.
Member Robinson?
Yes, to the attorney, since an item has been pulled out of the consent agenda, if that item is not going to be voted yes rather than, no, how do you put that back into consent agenda?
As you said, if it's been pulled, discussion,
I just
we
wanted to be
allow a
clear.
card, then
It becomes its own
Yes, sir.
independent item at
vote
that
on that
time?
item.
Okay.
I guess it goes to the level of discussion, because I swear I remember me personally pulling something on a consent agenda item. Maybe it was just a question, and then it went back, and we didn't go vote that separately. But maybe
Generally, when an item's pulled, so what remains on consent are everything except for A and D, which you're discussing and voting separately on. So your motion for consent would be approve consent agenda items B, C, E, F, G, H, and I, which remain on consent.
And do we have to vote on the other consent agenda items that were pulled first?
No, it's up to you.
All right. No, it really got me confused. Member Stokel?
Yeah, and just to clarify, so if we have a citizen that did pull, multiple cards for that, and they have their maximum 10 minutes, does not warrant that they spoke on those items?
According to your rules, you have the 10 minutes.
Right.
But if you pull an item, they also get 3 minutes of the item.
Okay. Even if so here's my thinking. I just have a question on my item, so I didn't pull it for a separate vote. I just wanted a question.
Sure, and that's maybe a distinguishing factor. Sometimes a member will say, I don't want to pull it, but I have a question on item A. Can you answer that question for me? But you didn't pull it for discussion by the group. The group says, no, I want to discuss it. That's a discussion item because it was pulled for discussion. You may just have a clarification.
Yes.
In my opinion, that's not pulling the item for discussion. You're asking for a clarification, and you want to keep it on consent.
Okay.
But if you want to pull it for discussion, that's what we're talking about.
Okay. Well, that's my intent with item D, is to pull for clarification, not to pull
Do you
for
want to pull
discussion.
it, or do you just want to ask a question?
Ask question, not for discussion, unless somebody else had discussion.
I didn't know you could even ask a question without pulling it. No one's ever
Yeah,
said you can ask a question.
same.
When you pull it, you can ask a question. And anytime I've ever pulled anything was to ask a question. And quite honestly, if I go back to Mr. Jordan's comments, he wanted clarification. Correct?
We did engage in discussion. I would say part on that.
Okay. Okay, so should I just go into my question regarding item D now, I guess?
I know. That's what I was going to do, and we'll do that and deal with the rest of it later. So, Member
Okay.
Stokel, go into your discussion.
Yeah, so my question, just really looking at this, could you just explain, it looks like one of the pumps wasn't working or was not operational. Does that mean, did we have an issue? Did something go wrong? Or is this just proactively planning for growth that we're anticipating in the age of this lift station?
This lift station is approximately 30 years old. The pumps that were in it, the one that was inoperable, that was an original pump. And so yes, one of them was not working, but we did put a temporary bypass pump on the station.
Okay, which was fine. So we didn't have any issues, but now
That's correct.
it's that old. Okay, and then what is the average lifespan of these lift stations? Is 30 years, are we kind of late? Is that normal lifespan?
That's a very good lifespan.
Okay.
These are large pumps. But again, that kind of goes back to how often they're used. If you're aware of this area, it was developed, and the whole area had sewer was planned for it, and there are very few occupants in the Vector Space Park. So these were pumps that were used very little.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking is I appreciate, and I wanted to pull it just to kind of clarify, I'm glad we're proactively doing this to prevent issues, and you have my support to continue doing these items.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I see no more cards. That doesn't mean there's not any more confusion, but we will move forward. Should I call cards on A and D? Although that was just really a clarification in my mind.
Right, I would call a card on A and then vote on A and then have speakers as to the rest of the consent agenda.
Then I can simply say, are there any cards on A? And there won't be because,
But
does anyone want to speak on A? Let's try it that way because, for example, Stan, I know you have cards in for more than one. You might have A in there. I don't know. So he's got A in there. Do we?
but again, because it was pulled, they would get 3 minutes.
All right. Does anybody want to speak on A separately? And if not, then you can do them all at the same time, Stan. All right. So no one wants to pull a card on A. So we move forward to, no one had a card on A. Say again?
I don't think you could, because if we speak and vote on
Yeah,
A,
and then
that
Stan wants to
nullifies
speak.
the card.
So then Stan, on his numbers, I guess it's 7 or so, he has A down there.
So if he doesn't want to speak separately and uses 10 minutes for those items, he can do that. Then we'll go back and we'll vote.
And we'll vote at the end of
Yes.
everybody speaking.
Yes, sir.
All right, so no one on A. How about D? Anyone wants to speak on D separately? No one on A, no one on D. We've certainly had any other discussion. Council? We're going to get a tutorial on this one before we go to the next one. And with that, could you call the cards on the consent agenda, please?
Stan Johnston,
That would be 10 minutes, sure.
Dan Johnson, 860 Point Salad Avenue, and I disagree with you about this thing and pulling an item and giving me 3 minutes on it, because I could have less or more and so forth like that, because, see, what I have to do is, and if you allowed it before, cities allowed it before. In other words, I've grouped some things together on different categories, different ones together, and spoke about them. So if you give me 3 minutes on one item, then that messes up my presentation.
Well, go to your
3 minutes.
presentation. I want to hear your presentation. So, and let's see what happens at the end of your presentation.
So, I want my 10 minutes.
just
and,
go.
I spoke to you about giving it to me, but, so here what we have is, let me give you briefly, is I have 8B is approved, 8C is approved, 8D is approved, but I've got some comments on these. 8, let's see what. 8G is neither, 8A is approved, and 8I is neither. So I wanted to kind of group them, but let me start a little bit with 8A. Is that this is of interest to me because I've even got it in this letter that I sent to you today. It says, here's what it reads. It says scam, hoax, fraud. Number 4, scam, hoax, fraud. It says continued false claims of containment of the massive sewage leak in December that was not contained. It wasn't contained. And contrary to city's false reports, most of the sewage flowed into the river, Indian River. What it did, just as this picture shows right here. Here's a picture of it doing it. Here's that black sewage. Black sewage. It's flowing. Where's it flowing? It's flowing to Spaceview Park, not to these ponds. It's flowing from the West Pond to Spaceview Park. There's where the sewage is going. There's what's going on. It was going there in December, and it was going there also in February. The dam was put up to stop this sewage from going to Spaceview Park February the 18th. February the 18th. February the 18th. That's a long time. So what I'm saying to you is that what I would like to do is I'd like to have Mr. Stauffer to sign and write in writing and sign and seal it that it was contained, that sewage was contained. And what I'll do is I've already, look here. I've already signed and sealed it right here saying it's not contained, right here. I did it December the 22nd. It wasn't contained. It went to Spaceview Park. And when it went to Spaceview Park, what did it do? Well, you know what? What they do is they have bassels in Spaceview Park. It goes straight through Spaceview Park and goes right into the river. How do I know that? How do I know that? How do we know that? Well, check the lab reports. That's what the lab report says. The lab report says it went right through the river, right to the river from Spaceview Park. Check the lab reports. That's the city's lab reports, not my reports. It says that Mr. Stauffer is not telling the truth. It says that a report that made January the 12th by Mr. Diesel and Mr. Stauffer together at that January 12th meeting was all false. And I've got 2 police officers that viewed it. February the 18th, this sewage was going right over to Spaceview Park. 2 police officers, and I got other people. Not only that, I got it written down here. People's names of Scott Devine and other people who constructed that. They can swear to the same thing. The February the 18th, because of the rain, the water went in West Pond. It rose up again, and that's exactly what it did. See how black it is? That's the sewage, and it's not going to the river over there through the ponds at Sandpoint Park. It's going to Spaceview Park. So what in the heck are we doing here? In other words, I've already challenged Mr. Stauffer to go ahead and sign and seal it because I want to report him to the board for lying. It's fraud. So, and as far as ECT, you know, if you have a consultant engineer, I sent you notifications. See that up here, this sign? I sent you guys notification. And not only that, there's a whole bunch of people called up the city. And by the way, I called the number that's on the city sign many times. They never responded. They wouldn't answer the phone even. So we want to spend $41,000 on something that what I can do is if you want to do a bathymetric survey, you just go down with the mushroom. By the way, I'm still a registered surveyor, registered in 1980. You don't need all that much of them. It would be real. It's real simple. You could even do the bathymetric survey, but you're just using some grunts. You don't have to be experienced. Get your surveyor to go ahead and mark the water level, the elevation of it, then go down with the mushroom, what do you call it, plumb bob or something like that, mushroom weight, and you can measure the water depths. It's real simple to do. It shouldn't cost more than $2,000 to do it. And that's draw it up and everything. Bathymetric survey. You can do that before doing this. I don't see any reason to do it right now. At least table it. And ECT, what I'm saying about ECT is, here I wrote this sign spray thing right here. This spraying the public with sewage. That's what even happened February the 18th. February 18th, I've got witnesses that the sewage was on. The spray was on. We got fountains around the pond. We got signs around the pond saying contamination and so forth. It's going over to Spaceview Park. No signs around it. Spraying in there. Water's going in there. Sprays in there. Wind's blowing. It goes on the sidewalk and goes over other people. Sprays on people. It sprayed on people. February the 18th. That's how long it's going on. So the thing is that ECT, I don't know where the ECT allowed that to go ahead and spray people with sewage. I signed and sealed it. You shouldn't do it. It says it down here also. You shouldn't do it. I'm registered, licensed by the state to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the people. If ECT was involved in this, I want to report him to the board. I'm going to report Mr. Stauffer to the board. If you can get him to sign and seal something, by golly, I'll report him. This is nonsense. So what we're doing on here is many things. I wrote more down here, but it's about, I think I'm about worn you out. But it's a terrible thing what's going on here. And it shouldn't be going on So, what else did I write in here? But this $41,000, my goodness.
So you're not for that, Stan?
Well, not at this time, neither. And then what it's right down here is that most of the sewage flowed in the Indian River as a damage to our environment and a serious threat to the health and safety of the people. And the facts are photos, just like this. Here's the photo right here. There it says it, right there. There's a photo. Photos, witnesses, and I told you, Scott Devine. He's a employee of the city, a lead man. Police, I had several police officers saw it. I had city staff. And the city lab reports, TNTC, manhole number 8. Anybody know what TNTC knows? Mr. Stauffer should know what TNTC means. I wrote it on here. It says TNTC and manhole number 8. Isn't anybody going to ask the question, what the heck does that mean? TNTC at manhole number 8. You know where manhole number 8 is? Manhole number 8 is situated right between Spaceview Park and the outfall of the river. There's manhole number 8. It says TNTC. TNTC. Manhole number 8. And you know, at that time, when manhole number 8 was saying TNTC, Mr. Stauffer was saying, we have it contained. We have contained the sewage from the sewage lake. We've contained it in the ponds. But TNTC, manhole number 8, at the same time, he's saying that, TNTC stands for what? In other words, when they count the colonies, when they're doing these laboratory reports, TNTC is off the chart. It means too numerous to count. That's what was going into our river when Mr. Stauffer was saying we've got it contained. TNTC, his own lab reports. TNTC, too numerous to count. It was off the chart. Off the chart. So I'm saying Mr. Stauffer didn't know what he's doing, and if ECT was also involved in it, they don't know what they're doing.
Thank you.
I'll ask for more time.
See none.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. All right. Back to the tutorial. Okay, we called for the cards for the separately, the ones that were pulled. We had none.
Yes, sir.
We
And
then
then
went
I
with-
would recommend that you vote on 8A separately and then do the remaining consent as one item.
Should I hold?
Yeah, she just back arrived.
Say again?
She just
Okay.
re-entered.
All right. All right. We're going to do 8A separately. So do I have a motion to approve 8A?
Mr. Mayor, since I have this opportunity, I move that we table this until we get more information on options to determine the silt level of East and West Pond.
Do I have a second to table 8A? I have no second.
Don't be mean to me.
Do I have a motion to table 8A? I do not. Do I have a motion on 8A?
You have a motion to approve 8A.
I have a motion to approve 8A. I have a second on 8A. Roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Nelson. Yes. Member Stokel.
Yes.
Member Robinson.
Yes.
Member Jordan.
No.
Mayor Diesel.
Yes. Motion passes 3-1. 8A passes 3-1.
3-1?
Excuse me, 4-1. 4-1. I said 4-1 the first time. 4-1. All right. Now we do the same thing with D.
Now you're going to run through B through I now as one item.
There we go. You heard it.
Motion to approve consent agenda items B through I.
I have a motion.
Second.
Member Stokel has a second. Roll call vote. B through I.
Member Stokel.
Yes.
Member Robinson.
Yes.
Member Jordan.
Yes.
Mayor Diesel.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nelson.
Passes unanimously. City Manager.
On to item 9A, which is the 2020-21-22 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan. This is your public hearing on the city CBDG 2021-22 Annual Action Plan. Authorized Neighborhood Services Director and the mayor to sign the grant applications and the certifications as required and approve the submittal to HUD. It is requested the City Council approve a request to HUD to transfer the outstanding NSP3 funds to the CDBG program. And Terry Franklin and team is here for a quick presentation for your final hearing.
Thank you. Staff presentation.
Good evening. As the city manager stated, we are here for our final hearing for the CDBG next year's annual action plan. The summary of the plan provides funding to 3 nonprofit public service agencies. I just wanted to take a moment to point out on page 137 of your report, the breakdown of the summary. Under public services, there is listed Early Learning Coalition. That should be Aging Matters.
Okay.
It's correct in the summary and in the action plan, just that one attachment. There was an error in that, and the public notice is correct.
Okay.
In addition to the 3 public service agencies, we'll continue to use our CDBG COVID-related CARES Act funds continuing into next year. And then we will also, for next year, on our infrastructure projects, we have a sidewalk infill program in the South Street Target area. And then under our home program, we'll be utilizing those funds for our housing programs. Generally, that is our first-time homebuyer program and our rehabilitation program and our community housing developer activities such as housing for the homeless and low affordable housing. Additionally, for next year, we are asking City Council authorization to transfer our unused NSP3 grant income that we've received over to our CDBG program. Right now, there's a balance of just over $44,000 sitting in the NSP grant, which is preventing us from closing that grant out. So if we transfer it over CDBG, we can use those funds for CDBG eligible activities. And also, although it's separate from the CDBG program, we are in the midst of developing plans for the American Rescue Plan, which will bring funding to Titusville for various housing incentives as well. So that will be incorporated into the action plan just as a reference. So HUD that is aware that we'll be utilizing those funds to also further our goals and objectives in that area of housing. And with that, I'll answer any questions you may have.
Before we have any questions, I get a few. I just want to thank you and your department for all you do to keep an awful lot of people afloat. We don't necessarily, or we're not able necessarily to get everybody where they need to be. It's been a tough time, but the Harry T. Moore Center down there is kind of in the eye of the storm and does a tremendous job. And I just wanted to get that said. You know, we see you in front of us a lot of times and you do this report and that report, but I hope we express to you our appreciation for the effort that you give over there. So I appreciate that, Member Stokel.
Thank you. Just a clarifying question. I remember when we had the presentations, I want to say the requests were just a little over what we anticipated having. Did you have to adjust? And yeah, just share about that.
Yeah, so in the plan, we were able to fully fund 2 of the 3 agencies, and the remainder went to the 3rd agency, which was just slightly under what they were asking. It was almost fully funded.
Which was the 3rd
So
one?
the Women's Center was fully funded, Aging Matters was fully funded, and the remaining balance went to Family Promise.
Okay, thank you.
Member Robinson.
Yes, hello, Terry. I was excited about reading this, and when I began reading it, to begin to mix this bunch of dollars with that bunch of dollars, and I was asking myself questions: how much money is in the NSP3 fund, and so forth. And I like what you have done. And and I think it's going to be good for the community to put it all together and make some wise decisions on how. I know housing is always going to be an issue, but it's critical to everyone right now. And more that the only thing that I suggest is that if it's still going to for Chodo dollars, is it still going to stay at the 15% level?
Yes, under the home program, the county, that's a mandatory requirement, so that
Even
50%.
if even if they when you transfer the NSP3 dollars over, it's still going to be mandated to follow all of the present guidelines, I would imagine.
No, the NSP $3 we're asking to transfer to CDBG.
Okay.
The Chodo is under the home portion.
Okay. And are you going to still, then because NSP3 was for housing, are you still going to try to use that to help assist with housing repairs and things with that NSP dollars?
Yeah, what that will do, it will allow us to increase, how we have the 15% cap on our CDBG for public services.
Right.
That will give us the extra so that we can put extra towards public services as well as housing.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other comments from council? Do I have any cards on this issue? City manager, I have a question. Conduct final public hearing. Then it says it is also requested the council approve the request to HUD to transfer the outstanding NSP3. Is that a separate vote?
You can make that as one motion, yes, sir.
All right, I would be looking for a motion to include. Vice Mayor Nelson.
I do a motion to authorize the neighborhood to approve the CDBG 21-22 annual action plan, authorize the neighborhood services director and mayor to sign the grant application and certifications and submit to HUD, and also approve a request to HUD to transfer the outstanding NSP3 funds to CDBG.
Perfect. And I'm
Perfect.
well. We needed to get that in there. Vice Mayor makes a motion. Member Jordan has a second. Roll call vote.
Member Rob,
Yes.
Member Jordan,
Yes.
Mayor Diesel.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nelson, Member Stokel.
Yes.
Thank you very much. It passes unanimously. City Manager B.
Yes, sir. On to 9B, which is ordinance number 9, 2021, which is a revocation of ad valorem tax exemption for New Space Center LLC. Conduct a public hearing of ordinance 9, 2021, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, revoking the economic development ad valorem tax exemption to New Space Center LLC, and provide for effective date.
Ordinance number 9, 2021, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, revoking the economic development ad valorem tax exemption to New Space Center LLC, and providing for an effective date.
And Ms. Nicholas is here to answer any questions that you may have on this item.
Any comment, report, or anything?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No remarks. I'm here to answer your questions.
You're here almost going on 9 o'clock, and no, poor lady. And I see no questions. Are there any cards? I see no. We've really got to come up with a question for her. No. Okay, with that said, we have the report. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance number 9-21, 2021, revocation of ad valorem tax exemption for New Space Center LLC.
I have a motion and need a second. I have a second from Member Stokel. The motion was Member Jordan. Roll call vote, please.
Member Jordan, Mayor Diesel.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nelson, Member Stokel.
Yes.
Member Robinson.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. We move to C.
On to C, this is ordinance 10-2021, Economic Development Ad valorem tax abatement to Dark Storms Industry LLC, Project Freedom, and the city attorney will read the ordinance.
Ordinance number 10, 2021, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, allowing for an ad valorem tax abatement to Dark Storm Industries LLC, Project Freedom, specifying the items exempted, providing for an expiration date for the exemption, and providing for an effective date.
Conduct a public hearing of ordinance 10-2021, an ordinance of the city of Titusville allowing for an ad valorem tax abatement to Dark Storms Industries LLC, Project Freedom, specifying items exempted, providing for an expiration date for exemption, and providing for effective date. And staff was recommending the ad valorem at 70% for 7 years. And as part of your information packet, you did receive 2 correspondence from citizens concerning this matter. And Lisa is here to answer questions that you may have.
I know the last meeting, and I think there was a lot of discussion, and I know it wasn't their representative. I think it was our representative. But anyway, I know there was some discussion concerning the 50 jobs. And there was some concern that we don't know how many of those will be local jobs, and that has quite honestly been on my mind since we left.
Yes, sir, and thank you for that. Basically, the 50 jobs, they are going to be created over 5 years. You have the job worksheet in your agenda package when those jobs are anticipated to come online. With regard to the jobs relocating from New York to Titusville, we can only take, the man's word, that it will be about 7 to 12 positions are to travel with him, and the remainder are to be filled here. So whether that actually happens, only time really is going to tell. But that is the projection, that 7 to 12 jobs will be relocating from New York.
Okay.
I read.
Hold up, Member Robinson. Let me recognize you. First, go ahead. Let me have your name and address and all that. Just get on the record.
Ms. Edgar Campa Palafox. I'm the Business Development Director with the Economic Development Commission.
All right, thank you. Member Robinson.
Yes, I mean, and I'm still concerned about that. I understand, and I get the numbers, how much we're going to lose, the dollars and cents from the taxes and so forth. And if it can't, if we can't bring decent jobs to the population that is here, and guarantee that we have those jobs with these individuals. We've sat around and we want to bring in trade school. We want to bring in everything else for minimum wage jobs. We need to bring in some high-paying jobs with these individuals. You want to come to our town, bring in a job so you can train our people.
Just so I understand what you're saying, this
no guaranteed job.
I see. Okay, that's what I thought you were saying. Let me go back to that again, because I do like the fact that these jobs are $50,000 a year jobs. These, and quite honestly, we've got some programs or some businesses here now that are struggling to get open because the low-paying worker isn't out there. And I'm not. I guess I'll get into it a little bit, but the unemployment benefits now are higher than the people can pay.
Yeah.
I don't want to use the name of any business, but I've talked to several businesses who are struggling. One is not open yet because they can't get employees. So we get that. But when we have one over here that's got a ability to provide $50,000 a year jobs, and again, having made my career in education, that's big money. I mean, I talked to somebody recently on a debate on this issue who said, $50,000 is not a big deal. Well, you weren't in education.
Yeah. Right. No, he's right.
So
he's right.
Let me just say that that is a big dollar payday to start, it sounds like to me. That's not my concern. My concern is, and I think you had noted it, we don't know how many of those jobs are going to be for the people we represent. And that's a big deal to us. And I'll be honest with you, it won't be a deal breaker for me, because if we get 30 of those jobs, that's a big deal. If ultimately within 3 or 4 years, we end up with more of those jobs, and ultimately I don't want to put a stoppage or anything on this, because then this grows and expands. And then instead of 50, we've got 200. I don't want to do that. But I for the first time, we were, I won't say informed, but it kind of hit us. It hit me. It didn't hit me until, remember Robinson asked a good question. The answer came back. I'm thinking 50 jobs are ours. And that wasn't the case.
And Mr. Mayor, we did, after that meeting, we went and checked with the client regarding, as Lisa Nicholas remarked, just to get a gauge of how many actually jobs are moving here from New York. As Lisa mentioned, the estimate from one of the partners is between 7 and 12 jobs potentially are moving from New York to here. So that leaves, the remaining roughly, 40 jobs for being hired from the Space Coast. And obviously, their jobs, they're paying $50,000 a year, as you remarked. And I just want to put or bring attention to statistics from the Bureau of Labor Statistics from the federal government. Right now, for the average for production occupations in the Space Coast, so any basically positions they manufacture in the Space Coast, is 39,000. So that's give you a perspective, of the level of pay that these jobs are bringing. Also, just as a reference, the Ad Valorem Tax Abatement Council from the county, the guidelines to approve incentives or consider an ad valorem is 42,000. So again, just putting just a little bit in context of the other number that I would like to share is as you mentioned, Mayor Diesel. When we bring jobs or we bring projects to the area, we are always looking for local citizens to access those jobs. There's no way to guarantee it, but we have programs in places, and the ADC gets involved to try to give the best chance to our local citizens to access those jobs. One of those programs that you probably recall is a Certified Production Technician. It's a program that is from the ADC in partnership with Eastern Florida College, trying to get people that are in other industries, displaced from other industries, or just considering to come to manufacturing to get a training to get a better chance when they're interviewing for those positions. Actually, the Certified Production Technician program is, if you take it as a citizen, you will get 15 credits towards an engineer and technology associate degree at Eastern College. The next class actually begins June 28th. So, we constantly have those trainings trying to give those, the citizens from our community the best chance to access manufacturing jobs. Throughout the region, manufacturing jobs are booming and talent is needed. So if anyone is looking to make a transition from an industry like hospitality or other industries that potentially have been impacted by the pandemic, this is a good chance for trying to get in a path where, you are in a career ladder. As you know, with manufacturing, jobs are created across the education spectrum, from GED to PhD. You need, managers, you need production technicians, you need logistics, you need quality assurance, you need researchers, potentially depending of the manufacturing operation. Hopefully that provides a little bit more context on some of the questions that you were bringing up, Mr.
Exactly.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could just add to that to address your concern regarding the average salary, no C-level or upper management employee salaries are included in the $50,000 average.
Very good. That's even better. Vice Mayor Nelson.
Well, I have some questions because unfortunately I read this fairly closely. And we're talking 50 employees, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but what it says is the percentage of full-time employees will not exceed 35%. So that means 30% of these employees are going to be part-time.
Just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, and the application states 50 jobs full-time new jobs. Yes, that's a point of clarification.
That's not clarification because I wrote this down. I think it's on page 250. And it says 39, so I guess I'm looking at one of the documents. And basically it says the percentage of full-time employees will not exceed 35%. So that's not 50 employees.
We have.
Well, let me say, you could get away with having 25 or 100 part-time employees. I mean, we're not talking full-time jobs, we're talking part-time jobs. So that was my first problem. And the second was there was a land purchase reimbursement that I did not totally understand, and I see Troy Post back there. And I assume Troy understands what we're doing. And then there was a $250,000 reimbursement for capital. And I gotta tell you, I'm reading this and I'm going, we're giving this much away for part-time jobs. So am I right? Am I wrong? I mean, that's what it says in here.
Vice Mayor, I've been through this item, I don't know how many times, but honestly, I do not recall seeing that in any of the information. Was that in the city agenda package?
This was in this, I'm sitting here writing it down. Obviously not writing it down well enough, write the page number right. But I'm writing down what I'm here. And I'm like, whoa, how much are we paying for part-time employment?
I really have no knowledge of that.
Troy, do you know?
Yeah, and also just to clarify, all the paperwork we provided states 50 jobs, full-time.
50 full-time jobs
full-time
with
jobs,
benefits.
correct.
No benefits. Oh, no
No,
benefits.
Well,
Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Hello.
I'm sorry, Mayor.
Mr. Mayor. and
Hello,
council.
sir.
Glad to be here tonight. Good to see all of you. So to address a couple of things that might potentially explain it, I know that in some of our zone documentation, sometimes we have language when we talk about the job creation that says that you can have part-times of which 2 can count as 1 full-time equivalency, but generally we don't allow more than 35% of the jobs to be created to be filled by that category. So the balance of them, the 65%, would still be full-time job positions, 1 person fulfilling that job. And I'm just guessing, maybe you saw something in one of the zone documents that might have
It may have been, because I was like really surprised. I'm like, and then it said no benefits.
So, the intention, I think, always is for a lot of these employers to try to get a full-time workforce. I mean, that leads ideally to less turnover, gives them certain skills that they were able to develop over time working with the company. But sometimes the realities of the economy are such that they have to rely on part-time labor. What we don't want to get into a position of having to do is trying to incentivize businesses who would have more than 50% of their workforce be comprised of part-time positions. That obviously wouldn't add a lot of stability to the local economy. So that could potentially be what that is.
So other question, land purchase reimbursement.
So let me tell you, this has been a very difficult project to try to pull off because we've been in some pretty intense competition with several states, actually, including some other communities in Florida. And I know that Edgar is well aware of this, working with the EDC, as is Lisa, working with the city. So what we've tried to do is put together a package that we think is as attractive as we can put together with what local incentives we have. Florida's been kind of at a disadvantage, to be quite frank. We no longer have a program that we were relying on for a number of years. That's the QTI program, a Qualified Targeted Industry Program. That program was eliminated at the state level. So when we're competing with a Georgia or a Carolina or an Alabama, we don't have that state program that we can also bring to bear for the project.
Okay.
So what we've had to do at the zone level is get creative, and we have. We've been back several times to the zone board to try to get them to essentially sweeten the package to make it possible for this developer to choose this site here. So what we ended up with, to make it attractive for them, and also because we got a sense from some of the other communities what we thought that they were trying to pitch to the company. We came up with essentially 3 grants. The first one is what we call a site reimbursement grant, which basically, the site that we're talking about, as you well know, at Spaceport Commerce Park, is an undeveloped site. So whoever is going to develop that site will have to take possession of it, clear the property, do all the grading, get all the permitting necessary to do all of that activity, and do all the mitigation of any kind of environmental issue that may be there at the site, along with making sure that they have all the stormwater drainage taken care of. So all of those expenses are things that will be incurred by the developer. Sometimes we compete against sites that are already prepared, so it makes it hard to show apples to apples when you have a site that is in the state that we have right now. So one of the grants was for this site reimbursement cost.
And how much is that grant?
That would go up to $250,000. Again, these are zone dollars coming from the county's zone TIF. We have the 2 TIF funds.
Okay, so that would be up to $250 based on what?
Yeah, they would have to submit their receipts, documentation to show what's actually been incurred to do the site reimbursement. But we're estimating that the cost would be about $250, maybe a little bit more. So we would reimburse up to that $250 amount.
Okay, so that would be for permits, engineering, et cetera.
Et cetera. Actual work in the field to do that infrastructure improvement.
Okay. You said there was another grant.
I'm sorry, what now?
There's 2 more grants?
And there's 2 more grants that we're
And there's
throwing
2
in.
more
That's
grants.
right. Because again, we're in a pretty intense competition, and we understand there's another community in Florida that is actually pitching a site that has all this stuff taken care of. The other one is what we call a capital investment grant, which basically rewards them for the overall capital expenditure that they expect to make on the project, which is with the equipment and the building, just over $3 million. Now, all we could do on this was go up to another certain dollar amount, which was $250, because with the zone, we have other projects that we're working on. We have to be kind of judicious about the way in which we use our funds, so we can't put every single dollar into the project. We had to put what we thought we could put in there from an affordability standpoint, yet still make it attractive to the developer. And then the last one is one that really is a little bit more creative for us. We call it a site acquisition reimbursement grant. The other reality that we deal with in some of these other states is that they have mechanisms which basically can take the cost of the land and zero it out to the developer. So they basically get the land for free. But we can't do that. We can't just give the land for free. So there has to be a mechanism that we can sell the property to them, but then over time, reimburse them for that cost if they do certain things. That's kind of what we did with this site acquisition grant. So they will have to come in, they'll have to buy the property, they have to have the wherewithal to build the project and actually get it in operation, get the CO on the building from Titusville. If they're able then to do that, then after a period of time of them occupying the building, they would get a reimbursement of a portion of what they've incurred for their site acquisition until they get to the full point where they would get the balance of the money back. So it's not like we turn around after 6 months, just give them the money. They actually have to demonstrate occupancy and running the business for a period of time before they would qualify for having that money.
And how much is that one?
So that one was $362,000.
Well, that makes
So
sense.
the total makes it $862,000 of zone assistance being brought to bear on this project.
Is the county adding additional funds?
Well, there is a county tax abatement that was recently approved by the county commissioner. So there is a dollar amount related to that, and Edgar can tell you a little bit more about what the cost is.
Okay. And Troy, I don't mean to give you a hard time.
No, it's quite all right.
It's sort of like we're going to get a percentage of part-time people, and for me, yeah, $862,000 reimbursement. So to me, it's like, and I know you guys have worked hard on it. I know you guys are hoping it goes forward, but I'm like, are we giving everything away? I know there's a clawback provision, but are we giving too much away? And are we getting an equivalent back?
Well, I think the answer for us is yes, we do feel good about the project. What this represents to us is continuing to develop a cluster that emerged here locally, and that is with some of these gun manufacturers we have in the area. You know, we have Diamondback that's down in Cocoa. We have Kel-Tec that's down there. We have Knight's Armament that's here in our own backyard. And we see this as a growing industry. Now, you know, there may be people that have different views on the gun industry, but you cannot deny that at the moment, that industry has done well from an economic standpoint. And that's kind of what our charge is to try to find those kind of firms that can pay the kind of salaries necessary to make good, have workers have good livings. Of course, you know, the intent, I'm sorry, it's kind of hard to breathe in this thing and talk. I'm still trying to adjust to all this stuff. But, you know,
You can take it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe, okay.
I mean, nobody's going.
There you
We're far
go.
enough
All right, so
away.
maybe that makes it a little bit more
Don't
comfortable.
sneeze. Yeah.
So it's easier to breathe without the thing. Of course.
Yeah.
But, you know, the intent, I think, of the developer is to hire 50 full-time people. I think that's really what they want to do. I don't think they're planning to come in and just put together a part-time force. So I really think that their intent would be to hire the 50 full-time people. But the other thing that I'd like for everybody to focus on is not just the direct jobs created by a project like this. You know, when you have something like this coming into your community, this is not a firm that's already here, that's expanding. And those are good things to have. We want local firms to expand. This is a brand new industry coming in. They're going to develop a supply chain locally. They're going to have things that they buy, everything from janitorial supplies, maybe other kind of parts that could be machined elsewhere that could come into the business. When you have that kind of activity, you're creating job opportunities in these other companies, and those can be filled by other people who live in the community. Those are what we call indirect jobs. But you can also get induced jobs created by all this activity. You know, if you go to a restaurant and you have workers from a plant that are going to the restaurant, then you have workers from the supplier that are going to the restaurant owner suddenly recognizes that business activity is increasing. They may have to add a few more staff to take on the increased activity. That's what we call induced jobs. So when you have a project like this, you don't just focus on what is directly created by the project, but you look at the other kind of jobs and the other kind of impact that is felt throughout the community. And I think that's what this project represents, a chance to really bring a new industry in, develop that cluster that we have, and maybe add to it with other companies in the future.
I think it got me when I was reading one of the reports, and it may have been his own report. Yeah, it's his own report. And it says, you know, that these are going to, a percentage of these are going to be part-time workers. And I don't know if that's just boilerplate language.
I would say, again, it's probably something in one of the incentive agreements from the zone, because we do have that language that, again, says we can count 2 part-times as a full-time, but we would not go above 35% of the workforce to be counted that way.
Okay, I see what. So it gives me pause. Oh, wait a minute. Secretary.
And again, you know, what we've said to the county commission before too is, you know, you look at the land that is in that park. You know, you look at the lot that this company is looking at right now. And that lot looks exactly like it did 1980. I mean, there's been nothing there except for tree growth, of course, during that time. You know, here's a chance to take something that has really been generating no economic activity, hadn't even been generating any taxes at all because it's owned by the county. And you have a chance to bring in an industry from out of the area, from out of the state even. This is a net win for Florida. And again, we're doing it without a Florida state incentive tool. To bring that in, have them locate there, take that lot, make it useful, generate jobs, generate economic activity, buying merchandise, shopping locally. It's kind of a win-win, I think.
Vice Mayor, if I could, I would like to address your concern with regard to benefits packages.
Yes.
It is the intent, and it's right here in the executive summary. that was prepared by the EDC along with the client. In addition to the base wage, employees will enjoy a competitive package of benefits.
Part-time?
No,
I mean,
it mentions nothing about part-time, but it
Okay.
does not explicitly say full-time.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would say somewhere in there says something to that effect. I don't, I did write it down, but I wrote it down the wrong page. So that was something that, like, talking part-time employees, you know, obviously they don't get benefits. And I'm like, so why would we want to give incentives to somebody who's going to come in, basically almost take advantage of our citizens, you know?
You know, and again, I can't speak for the developer, but I will say that most businesses, I think, have a preference for employing people full-time to be able to lower the turnover ratio that they have at their firm. You know, you want workers that are there for a period of time to buy into the company so that they can stay there long enough, and skills they develop there will stay for the company. So to the owner's advantage to try to make sure they incentivize and pay those people properly, they would stay on the payrolls for as long as they could. The last thing I'll mention is I know the recommendation coming back was to give the tax abatement for, I think, 70%. You know, we did make an appeal to the county commission that they consider the full 100%, and they did agree to that. So, you know, we would respectfully ask you to consider that. Again, this has been a tough project, a lot of competition. We think they're watching right now, so, you know, because they are weighing all this, and for them to be in a position where they have a lot of sites competing to win it, it's a good position for them to be in, certainly. But we think that if they are able to locate here, it would be a very good thing for the community and good thing for the local economy. So please do consider what the county also did.
And I would say, having sat in on the meetings or go to those meetings, and when their representative came down to speak, it's very clear that there's a lot of opportunities for them in other places. And we are in a dogfight, so to speak. I get that. But I am concerned that all I'd heard previously and said with pride, you know, $50,000 a year jobs. And I know that that's their intent, because I've heard that several times now. Their intent is to have $50,000 a year jobs. But they could go 35% part-time, which would be 2, and I don't know what that would equal, you know, so $25,000 and no benefits. I hadn't heard that until recently. That being said, I think that this is a project, a program, and like you said, in an area that's been sitting there desolate forever. I would look down the road before, you know, to as far as the 10 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, what do we think they're going to be? I don't think they're going to sit at 50 employees. I think that this is going to become a bigger area that we, as you said, we suddenly are an area that's, you know, building guns, armory. And you got, I'm not sure how to say that, but a nice tone.
And
But anyway,
machining operations.
there you go.
They do other
And there's more and more of those in our area, and as was discussed at the zone meeting, it spreads out a little bit more from the space program. It gives a little bit more diversity to us in our area. I like that too. I like everything about this. I just want to make sure that when we're approving this, we're approving it, that our citizens are going to benefit from this. And when I hear that we could have up to 50, 40 of our area citizens apply for and obtain not only a $50,000 a year job, but the training that would keep them employable at a $50,000 plus year level for many years to come, I like that a lot. I just want to make sure that we're getting what we think we're getting. Member Jordan.
I've been sitting here very patient for a long time. Oh, thank you. I'm looking at the application on page 206, and it says anticipated number of employees is 50%, increase in overall employment 100%, expected number of new employees who will reside in Titusville 100%, percentage of existing employees who have resided in Titusville for more than 2 years, NA, anticipated average wage of employees $50,000, anticipated average annual payroll is $2.5 million, anticipated new capital investment as a result of expansion or relocation of business, $3.2 million. So it sounds to me like it's going to be full-time, 50 people. Of course, they're going to have to ramp up to that. I didn't see, I was looking for exactly what you were looking for. I just don't see it. But the bottom line to me is if you heard the two speakers talk, we're in competition. We're not getting any help from the state. Normally, what has occurred in the past is the state gives some money and then, the county tried to give some money and then they come down to the city. We are sitting up here to make sure we take care of as many citizens as we possibly can. As it relates to employment, we all know the history. I'm one who was laid off from the Space Center. My wife was one, and other people of my age was laid off. And it didn't feel good. Actually, it felt good to me because I was ready to move on. But I would tell you that when you can diversify and not have everything related to space, it just makes good business sense. And yeah, some people may not like guns. I actually happen to have 2 or 3, so don't come to my house. But I will tell you that it is a growing industry, and it's nice to have one, I believe, in Titusville. It actually will be an industrial area that is improving, it is growing, and from what I understand, the land that is going to be developed has been around at least 40 years with nothing on it. So we weren't getting any taxes at all. I'm in favor of 100% because we are in competition, and I think it was alluded to that others have a pad-ready site for them, which means they don't have to pay for all the infrastructure, grading, and all this stuff that if we're lucky enough to get them, they're going to have to pay it here. So I think it would be for us to get on a better playing field, level playing field with others, then we should push it as far as we possibly can. Also, we don't even know if they're going to come here. So why would we put ourselves in a negative position and not just go all out to try to get these people? And at the end of the day, we can hold up our heads and say we did everything we possibly could to bring another industry into Titusville and not was in fear of them not doing what they said. If you remember, I'm going to give you a little history. When Embraer Air was trying to come to Melbourne, there was a lot of naysayers that said we shouldn't do this and we shouldn't do that. And then what happened? They exploded in Melbourne. So when opportunities like this come along, if we possibly can, I think it would be very wise of us to do everything we possibly can to help the state, help the county, help our city to bring opportunities for our citizens. So I'll certainly be voting for that. And Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make the motion when
Hold
it's
on one
time.
second. Let me get to Member Stokel first.
Well, I wasn't finished with what I was going to say.
You're making a motion, though.
No, I wasn't going to make a motion. I said, when it's time, I would like to make a motion.
Okay,
Thank you.
absolutely. And it will be soon. Member Stokel.
Thanks.
Matter of fact, I would like to say we're going to conclude with Member Stokel.
So I'd like to clarify the 50 jobs at 50,000. I feel like we're saying 50 jobs at 50,000, but the way I'm reading this, it's an average of 50,000. So we could have multiple people making $100,000 and then some people making 20,000. So it's an average of $50,000.
I'm not certain of the exact amount that a C-level upper management employee, I'm not sure what that threshold is. However, we have been told, we've been assured that those jobs are not being counted toward the average. Now, might you have some at 35 and some at 60, I suppose, but none of the higher level salaries are being included in that.
Okay, and we don't know the numbers right now of the 50, the anticipated. We don't have a range of like 35 to 65, for instance.
I do not. I do not. Okay. In your agenda package, the job creation worksheet, it does list the salaries. So,
okay.
Yes. So the highest one looks like 100,000 and the lowest maybe 32, 31,000.
All right, you good, Member Stokel?
Okay, no, and then one more thing,
No,
maybe
let's
for
be
Troy. So the way I look at this is when we're talking about incentives, they're really good during like rough times. So back in 2008, when the shuttle program, we lost that, like this, we needed this stuff. What I'm seeing now is I feel like we are on that upper swing. We have a lot of growth. We have a lot of people moving here. A lot of people, I feel like, moving to Florida in general. I don't know if part of that is due to the pandemic or not, but I feel like we are becoming that place. And so whenever I see that happening, I tend to push back a little bit on the incentives, wondering, do we need those necessarily? So I'm curious to see what your opinion, what you've seen.
That's a fair question. I respect that. I think it goes back to what Member Jordan said. You know, it's diversification. That's one of the most important things that we're supposed to work on through the zone and really with all of our economic development agencies because of the dependency we had on these public sector driven aerospace programs, you know, NASA in the past. You know, we still are vulnerable, I would say. If you look at the complement of businesses that exist here, and particularly in the north end, still very heavily dependent upon aerospace. That's not necessarily a bad thing. We like the aerospace industry. But from a healthy economy standpoint, we need other kinds of industries to kind of balance us out. We're really not a distribution location. We just don't work out that way with the way the interstate networks are. We have some distribution firms, but not too many. We're not really a farming community, so we don't have any kind of agriculture. We are primarily a manufacturing group, industry up in this area, but a lot of that is concentrated in aerospace. So we still need other kinds of firms to come into the area. We want to see more boat builders, more machining operations that work outside of aerospace, maybe in automotive and other kinds of things. So we can't take our foot off the gas. We have to keep going. The zone tool has a limited life. You know, it wasn't created to last indefinitely. It only has a 30-year window. This is our 10th year, so we're 1/3 of the way through our life. We need to make sure that the next 2/3 that we're concentrating on working on that diversification, working on small business development. We have a lot of different things we need to be working on, but this also is something that's very important to get industries like this that will further help diversify the local industry. We'll do as much as we can for the next 20 years.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
And I would just add to that, and I noted the diversity aspect of it as well, but I think that a yes to this gets other industries looking here with the possibility of a yes for them. And again, I've only been sitting in on the zone briefly, but the number and diverse companies that talk to our area are a lot, but they need to see that we're willing to say yes to things other than the space program. And I too love the space program. We came here because of the space program. That being said, I think that it's time for Member Jordan.
We have one card.
Oops. Oh, I'm sorry. All that excitement. Have a card.
Nathan Slusher.
You talk Saturday. No.
Good evening. My name is Nathan Slusher. I live at 860 Allendale Street. For the record, I'm actually neither for nor against moving forward on this. I want to bring up to your attention what happened at county level last week. They spent 3.5 hours discussing a fire assessment increase because of reasonings like this. The attorney said that you have specific exemptions. I haven't seen them. You have them. I would request you make sure that they're not being exempted on services like fire and police. Because at the end of the day, that tax burden will get transferred to the citizens because they're still going to need them. Dark Storm would still need fire. They would still need police, and emergency if anything were to happen. So somebody has to pay for those services. That burden doesn't just disappear because we exempt it. So I would just request that we make sure that we're not exempting things that will eventually transfer to the citizens and increase the residents' taxes in a 15-year window like we saw last week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Always well spoken. Thank you.
Yeah, kind of like him.
So far.
So far.
Member Jordan.
All right. Mr. Mayor and Council, I move that we approve ordinance number 10-2021, Economic Development Ad valorem Tax Abatement, Dark Storm Industries for 100% of 10 years.
I have a motion from Member Jordan. Do I have a second?
What's wrong with you all?
Do I have discussion?
Oh, yeah, I don't have a second.
Member Stokel.
I'm in favor of the 7 years at 70% with what's recommended by staff. I feel comfortable with that. At the end of the day, I mean, even as our citizens spoke, we don't want to put too much tax burden on our citizens. We want to try to incentivize, and I think this is a fair package.
Mr. Mayor.
Member Jordan.
I think it's pretty clear that the other taxes that Nathan spoke of is still intact. That doesn't go away for sure. You got school taxes and all the other stuff that they have to pay for. It's not going away anywhere. No, this is as ABT. The reason why I'm pushing this, Member Stokel, Dr. Stokel, my friend, is that we really need to send a consistent message to them that we really want to do the right thing by them. We've got the county who's agreed to the same thing, and because it's coming to our city, I think it would be just consistent with us to be one body saying, yeah, we want to do what we can for you. And as I said, the big thing to me is there are other cities that actually have a pad-ready site for them, and it's going to cost a great deal to put the infrastructure in and develop the site in order for them to use it for what they need to use. And it's really going to take more time for them to do it on our site than it would for a site that is pad ready. So that's why I'm requesting it 10.
All right, with that said, Member Jordan's motion is still on the table. I don't have a second.
I didn't convince anyone to do it.
All right, with that, do I have another motion?
I make the motion to approve ordinance number 10-2021, economic development ad valorem tax abatement to Dark Storm Industries for 7 years at 70%.
Member Stokel makes a motion. Do I have a second?
Yes, I'm seconding it.
Okay, Member Jordan.
Begrudgingly.
Member Jordan seconds. Roll call vote.
Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nelson? Stokel?
Yes.
Member Robinson?
No.
Member Jordan?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1. City Manager.
On to item D, which is ordinance 11/2021 business tax receipt exemptions, and the city attorney will read for the record.
Ordinance number 11/2021, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances to reference business tax receipt exemptions created by the state of Florida by amending Chapter 11 Licenses and Business Regulations, specifically creating Section 11-37.5 exemptions under state law, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, effective date, and incorporation into the code.
Conduct the public hearing of ordinance 11/2021, amending the Code of Ordinances to reference business tax receipts, exemptions created by the state of Florida by amending Chapter 11 Licenses, Business Regulations, specifically, it's getting late, creating Section 11-37.5 exceptions under state law. And Ms. Busaka is here to answer questions that you may have.
Ms. Busaka, anything to start with? Any questions from council? Seeing, and Member Robinson has a question.
I make the motion to accept.
Well, hold on one second on the motion. Hold on one second. Hold on. Do I have any cards? No cards? Okay. Do I have a motion?
I make the motion on ordinance number 11/2021 business tax receipt exemption.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Nelson? Member Stokel?
Yes.
Member Robinson?
Yes.
Member Jordan?
Yes.
Mayor Diesel?
Yes. Motion passes unanimously. City Manager.
We have no ordinance first readings. We have no old business. On to item 12A, which is our mid-year 2021 financial review. And our recommendation is that council accept the FY 2021 mid-year financial review and approve the proposed budget amendments for the FY or for the first quarter ending in March 31st, 2021. And Bridget is here.
2 quarters.
And staff report, please.
Okay, y'all ready? Okay, ready to spend some money. This is just a reminder of the objectives that y'all had for this budget year. Y'all have seen this quite a lot lately. And this is also a reminder of the city ordinance that establishes the mid-year review. And the policy that basically says we expect every department to manage to its bottom line budget. And then as of March 31st, which is midway through our fiscal year, we are on track to meet our annual budgeting estimates. Our revenues are on track, and we have no reason to believe at this point that they will not meet or exceed budget. That's a good thing. As we have been doing this whole fiscal year, we have been providing y'all an update on the state revenues, and we have had a lag. We still continue to have those delays in a few of the state revenue categories, but if you can see on this slide, we're trending a little bit higher than what we would expect to be at this time in the fiscal year at 54%. And typically we're at 50% of budget or less, so we're doing quite well. So we believe we will meet budget in our state revenues, possibly exceed. And we would expect that given that we did not budget the final third revision to the state estimates as we went through this budgeting. With regard to expenditures, everybody in the city are managing to their bottom line budgets, and halfway through the year, they're meeting their proposed benchmarks. So we don't see any issues, at least right now. That, but we do have some adjustments to recommend. And here they are. Earlier tonight, you saw Zach Shalafor, the audit partner, talk about CAFR. This is the part of the mid-year where we go and we adjust the FY21 budgeted numbers to match what happened with CAFR. When we do the budget, it's a year and a half in advance of the fiscal year end, so we estimate what we were going to start fiscal year 2021. Well, now we know how we ended 2020, and we know what we actually have to start fiscal year 2021, and this is just the adjustments that we're making to our working capital numbers in order to make our budget come in alignment with how we ended last fiscal year. The big number you need to pay attention to is general fund. We picked up an additional $2.8 million in working capital that we did not plan last fiscal year, over and above what we budgeted. So that's some of the additional money that Zach was talking about earlier today. And all of the other funds are pretty much running in track. Those with negative current year working capital balances, we're going to correct those as part of the mid-year adjustment. And some of that just has to do with the shifting of funds. We weren't sure where things were going to land. And I don't know if you all have any questions about any of these, but most of the funds are in good standing. Those that aren't were the result of, again, some adjustments that were made to the budget after we published the 21 budget. So we're just having to make those right at mid-year. So everything will be whole when we get finished. Mid-year requests. You'll see some themes through all of these. The pay plan adjustments that's being proposed by the city manager. These are just the 6 months of those pay rate adjustments. These are fully burdened with all the benefits attached.
And
so,
if I could add to that, our goal before the pandemic going into this budget build was to do these pay adjustments as part of the current budget that we're in. And we zeroed out that because of the uncertainty of our revenues. We wanted to make sure our revenues were sufficient to do these awards, pay raises. This is the final phase of the pay raises that we started 5 years ago. And we did the initial over 3 years. We did some additional adjustments, and now we're working on finishing up with the management, as well as working towards the $15 an hour minimum wage goal that's ahead of us. As part of the $15 an hour minimum wage, we've got to also decompress some of the employees right above that, so that you don't have a new employee coming in that's making more than an employee that's been with us for 10 years. So those adjustments are being made as part of the overall plan. So again, some of this pickup is because we were so conservative going into this budget year. We just didn't know, and we would rather do a good pickup at mid-year than be having to cut things at mid-year.
And so you're going to see these in each fund that has salary. And again, this is 6 months worth of fully loaded benefits and the differences in the pay adjustments. The other two things I wanted to mention on here, there are 2 additional FTEs that are being proposed. In your read ahead slides, I had the human resources at a half of an FTE, and I was so busy prorating for half a year, I just prorated that for half a year, but it's really a full FTE, so I corrected that on this slide. And then the other one is a development services technician, and that was at 1 FTE on your slide. Do y'all have any questions about any of these other items on general fund?
I do.
Certainly.
Sure. So the HR person making $21,000 as a full-time person, is that?
So this is fully loaded salary with all the benefits, the healthcare, the FICA, all of that. That's half of a year. So in total, that position would be making 42, but
Okay.
I'm prorating it for half of a year.
Okay.
But that's fully loaded.
Okay, I do notice for the 726, I see some uplighting.
Yes,
Is that a
so
surprise?
this is just we're going to get to the capital project funds that this funds, but this is just telling you that general fund's going to be funding these projects in roads and streets. And so, and in general construction right underneath it. So you'll see those exact projects, and Kevin can address those to get to that fund.
Okay.
Okay, y'all good? So of that $2.8 million pickup we got from CAFR, $1.3 million, almost 1.4 is what we're proposing tonight. Slide. The next slide is CRA. It's just the pay adjustments. And then impact fees. This is just the impact fee fund's contribution to another project in the general construction fund, which is the government complex. The government center feasibility study. Multiple funds are paying in towards that, and that's just the impact fees portion of that. We'll get to that project in the capital project funds as well. And then the building department, we are just doing the same. We're truing up their working capital, and then they're also paying their allocated portions of other internal service funds adjustments for IT and further back in the presentation. Here we are to your question. General construction and roads and streets. Because we did not budget any new capital outlays hardly in these funds because we weren't sure of revenues, these are the mid-year proposals that we are actually proposing this fiscal year out of both of these funds.
Now, as we went through the budget process, you all remember we had that unfunded list of items. So we went back to the directors and saw what we could get as a one-time purchase of items. And but most of these, because we did zero out capital, like Bridget said, this is a good thing that we're able to add capital during this budget year.
So the first 3 items in general road constructions, those are really the revenues to fund the bottom 2 items. It was just the easiest way we could kind of show them as transfers and revenues. So the projects these go with is part of it is water, well, actually the first 4 are all revenues. So all of these are going to fund the government center feasibility. But the top 4 items. And then with regard to roads and streets, we're funding these 4 projects. Yeah, 5 projects that I've listed. So did you have questions about those projects specifically?
Yes, one of the initiatives we were looking at is putting a sign, welcome to Titusville, on that. I think we all got sticker shock when we saw the expense of that. So what we would like to do is, as our AMAX Brewer Bridge is kind of a signature of the uplighting of people, think of our city as that beautiful bridge. So we're trying to figure out if we can uplight that pedestrian bridge, because it's rather dark in that area, and I think it may enhance the entranceway. As one of your initiatives is to enhance our entranceways. And the other thing is we only have a few dirt roads left in the city, and part of this will be doing a dirt road.
So the enhancements, I know we talked about it at our meeting that, but it might have been me saying that they look pretty boring coming into town. Does this have anything to do with?
Yep.
That was me.
Yeah, this is set aside to update the entryway signage.
Okay, great, great.
This was actually proposed in next year's budget, yeah.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Oh, all these projects, with, except for resurfacing, were all items we were adding in next year's proposed budget, so there'll be savings in future year. But yes, that was, whatever, enhanced lighting, new landscaping, over changing the look of the signs.
Okay, good. Appreciate that.
Is that it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Member Robinson?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I accidentally hit it with the paper.
No worries.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
And now we're on to water resources. Again, they have the same pay adjustments. Oh, and then there's a lot of capital projects here that Sean has listed that they're wanting to accelerate the fiscal year as well, in addition to their contribution into the IT fund and to the government center feasibility study. Questions about water? And then finally, these last three funds are pretty easy. They're just truing up some budget items in stormwater utility and purchasing some software, a few capital outlay projects for the marina. And then other than that, it's mostly just the same things you've already seen. Pay adjustments and then adjustments to the internal service fund.
So I keep seeing this CAFR adjustment. Explain that to me.
So IT was one of those funds that ended up with less money going into this fiscal year than what we thought when we budgeted last fiscal year. And so because they're an internal service fund, they don't get money. They only get money from the other funds, and we can't leave them in a negative. So we're just trying to make their budget whole this year because they were short.
I see.
Okay?
Okay.
And fleet, same thing. And then this gets to IT. Part of the reason why they're having to request so much from the other departments is because they do have the pay study adjustments and then contributions to some of these other the government center, and then also I think those are the two main things, and their CAFR adjustments. And then finally, we are getting to the loss fund. That's our insurance fund, and we're just recognizing unbudgeted premiums to offset some cost revisions that happened in between when we published the proposed and adopted budgets. And then finally, to the insurance funds. We had last fiscal year, we had to do a 60-day adjustment to the health clinic fund because our contract with Parish was increased, and so that affected this year's budget. And the personally self-insured insurance fund is a place we're going to be making from. So other than that, and then the reinsurance numbers came in at a little bit higher than we had projected in budget. So after if you approve all these budget adjustments, then we'll be able to maintain a balanced budget and monitor our expenses and revenues to the bottom line. And here's just a summary. And what I've done here is I've just taken the working capital numbers after all the appropriations that affect working capital that were proposed citywide. We would still maintain a balance of almost $60 million in working capital across all funds after these are made, just so you can kind of get an idea of the bigger picture. And then we get to start thinking about 22. And then I think the city manager had forwarded those to y'all a while back. Adam.
Every January, we publish the city manager's guidance to begin building the budget. And last year, of course, we had to adjust our budget because we went in initially with a COLA pay raises operating at 3%. And we had to eliminate those items because of the uncertainty. So these are the guidance that we gave our directors to begin building this year's budget. Now, we do work off of a 5-year plan. So what they'll do is they'll adjust that next year to these items, and that's what you'll see at your first budget hearing.
Which brings us to what's next. We still plan to provide you all the budget by July 13th. We have until the July 31st, but we're still shooting for July 13th. And then we've already scheduled the workshops and the public hearing for the 22 budget. I think that's it.
And if I could, counsel, before you have a discussion, I really did fail to thank Bridget's team during the CAFR presentation for all the hard work. This was a really uncertain time, as you all have lived it. And I really, our whole team did a great job to weather the storm. And Bridget's team was pedaling probably the hardest to keep us on track. So kudos to Bridget, Jenna, who put together the CAFR itself. It's a tremendous team, and they should be recognized as their efforts for this year.
I agree, and thank you. And I was actually, I did get a little bit of that in there after the CAFR, and man, it must be getting late. We got to go.
Yeah, we got to go.
But I again, even as you're speaking, I was going back and looking over my notes from the auditor, and with our meeting with the auditor today. And again, I always want to include city manager and his team, because clearly in our discussions, it's obvious it's a team event. You may lose a little more sleep than the rest of them, from what I can hear you say. And that being said, you take ownership, and I appreciate that. Because you take ownership, we have an audit where the auditor speaks of this is the best audit, and they keep getting better than he in his 4 years with us, and that we are solid in our finances. So that doesn't just happen. I mean, sometimes we get spoiled and we sit up here and, okay, that's good. Another great audit, and things are moving in the right direction. And even though we went through this, and this, they'll make it work. And you do. But I don't want us to ever take that for granted. And I, for one, and I think I can speak for this council, we appreciate your efforts, the team. And I don't even know who all's on the team.
Everybody.
But there's a bunch of people on the team, and without that team, we don't sit in that audit review and the CAFR review and get the good words that we get, because it's been a tough time. So with that, I don't see anybody saying anything here. Okay.
I can say something.
Okay, Member Jordan, I knew you could.
I can always say something for sure.
After 9:30.
Oh, you're right. I am really getting sleepy too. So certainly want to acknowledge you, Bridget, for sure, because you're always a hard worker and everything. But there was a little lady who's sitting right behind you, and we didn't recognize her. So I certainly apologize for that. And you even said in our meeting that it was Jenna, I think her name, that actually did a lot of hard work. So kudos to her, and just
Amen.
Thank her for the hard work that she's been doing. Apologize that we didn't say something to her while she was here, for sure. So I'm sure she didn't want to be here in the first place, but anyhow, we appreciate it.
Yes.
For sure. I did have one other question, and I guess it's for city manager. You said it was 3%, but you're using 5% next year. Can you explain a little bit more?
So what we're doing for a COLA itself, we're going in at 2%. I don't know if you've seen your grocery bills lately, but
No,
I think that may be adjusted based on the CPI by the time we get to budget. What I'm talking about with 3%, that's operating. They're operating budgets to be increased by 3%. The municipal operating's running around 8% right now. We always try to keep it pretty low. This budget year that we're currently in is 0. So everybody worked on the previous year's operating.
Very good.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no further discussion. Are there any cards? Okay, do I have a motion?
Move to accept the FY 2021 mid-year financial review and approve the proposed budget amendments for the fiscal year quarter ending March 31st.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Member Stokel?
Yes.
Member Robinson?
Yes.
Member Jordan?
Yes.
Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor?
City manager. Excuse me, motion passes unanimously. City manager.
On to item 12B, which is a work order for the Titusville Government Center. Approve the work order to AECom Technical Services Incorporated in the amount of $361,922 to provide an architectural, engineering, and consulting services for a multi-department government center design development services, and approve the mayor to execute the work order upon review by the city manager and city attorney. This action is subject to the mid-year budget review allocation, which you saw throughout that.
Right.
Kevin's on board to answer questions about that. Your council discussion about looking forward to building or governments. This is the first step, and this tells us where we need to be looking, and it will present a lot of the information. It's not a quick study. It's 9 months maybe. And we will be back to council with their recommendations. So Kevin, if you have anything else to add.
As the manager said, it's a 200-day project. So the work order set up for 200 days. It's basically taking every division housed in this building, the PD headquarters, fire headquarters, my administration, water resource administration, allocation for neighborhood services as well if needed, moving them to one location, bringing in Station 14 if that's available, depending on the site selection, housing the new Emergency Operations Center in addition to. So we went with ACOM, who was already under contract with Water Resources, to develop this scope. They're going to review all our existing infrastructure, people, and project out growth, program it all together into one package, show us what size site we need, what size building we need, project the cost. One of the unique things they are going to do is also going to show us our carrying costs in our existing buildings to give you an idea of what these older buildings have cost the city in upkeep, to kind of give some metric into the next step. But be happy to answer any questions.
I would just comment, and we've got a couple I think up here, but the amount seems exorbitant. Of course, it always does, but it also seems that it's the going rate, and with this particular company that's done zillions of these successfully, it basically comes down to this. It's the first step of a long journey, and every journey starts with the first step. And if we are ever going to get serious or even consider, or even if it's not in our time on council, this has to be done. This step has to be done. You can't just say, okay, let's go do this. But it has to be done. And if we start with this and it goes further, it goes to a referendum, certainly we wouldn't probably, in my mind, whether we're on the council still or not, move forward with this without a referendum of citizen vote. But I would definitely, be excited about taking that first step. And sometimes that first step is painful. Sometimes you want to get it for free, but it ain't going to happen. So I support this first step, and we'll see where it goes from there. But with that, I think Member Robinson.
Ready to go along with you on it.
Okay, Vice Mayor Nelson.
Well, Kevin, I got a question for you. When we tore down years ago, Dayview Elementary School, put up this building, idea was we can renovate it and add floors to it. So I'm not seeing that in the work order. Give us a price of what it would take to totally renovate this, add to it.
Part of the challenge, just initially on that thought, is if you add floor space to this, we wouldn't have the sufficient parking here.
We wouldn't have sufficient
Parking,
parking
because you're adding more employees here, and
and nowhere to park.
yes, ma'am. And the second issue, this is a 50-year building.
Yeah.
And if you look at the wall right over there, when it rains, water comes through the wall.
Water comes through the wall.
Yeah, the part of the carrying cost of this building is when you install, say, the elevator is the original elevator, it's about to be gutted and replaced. So that's a $50,000 investment. A couple of years ago, we replaced the AC units on the roof for about $400,000. That's just the main unit. The ducts haven't been replaced. So there's another 160 variable valves throughout this building that our consultant feels, the AC consultant feels, is going to have to replace in the future. So all those things have carrying costs. So when you improve a building of this age, if you really want to make it longevity-wise, the only part that is good on the building is the concrete core. So the poured concrete structure is good. All the mechanical and electrical is going to fail. and have to be replaced. So it's really, and like City Manager said, from a space standpoint, if you're in the building, you know, I don't work here, so luckily I'm not around it, but this building has been reconfigured so many times since the 1960s it was built. We've disconjointed it, we move things, we constantly find space to fit another person. And the parking lot's full during the regular business day with employees. Another vertical step gives another 7 employees that have to kind of fit in the space. But I think the cost would be more or less, you'd have to take it down to a stud rebuild, which would be down to the concrete core and rebuilding it all again while still trying to operate. So logistically, it's a huge nightmare. And then the other part of this is you have 2 other buildings that were not purposeful built, the police headquarters that we've also invested a lot of money in keeping it going. John likes to joke that we always have something broken there because we really always have something broken there. 40,000 square foot building has things that break. Fire headquarters also, again, it was a bank, repurposed to a fire headquarters. So those are part of this package that, you know, particularly PD is a big ticket that's got its life is getting to the point there's not another story to add. There's not anything short of rebuilding it. So,
And Kevin's not really giving the full story on his workspace.
Well, we know what his space looks like.
and that's what we're trying to do, and to consolidate this structure wouldn't be sufficient. The second point is the discussion about parking in the downtown. This building would probably be eliminated, is what our thought is, and become a parking lot initially, which would add parking space. And then if the need would be to go vertical with some sort of parking garage, you would have the footprint available to do that.
So as part of the study, find out how much money we're putting into this building, keep it moving.
Yeah.
I mean, because I'd sort of like to.
Yeah, they'll do that for all of our current facilities.
Yeah, they're going to give us a life cycle look. But we have the record of what we expended. We'll give them that. But they'll also tell us if we invested in an AC unit 5 years ago, it's got 5 more years of life. So they'll capitalize that out to give a life cycle comparison. By operating these buildings, it's going to cost the city $4 million, build a new one for X. You know, that's part of what they're going to undertake is they're going to show us what all these consolidations will save.
Yeah.
Obviously, new technology is a lot better. New building construction has come a long way since 1960. And this company,
really good
if you looked them up, they're a large engineering firm. They've done their portfolio is quite impressive. I know the sticker shock, but when you're talking a $40 to $45 million building range, you're going to expect 5% of that's going to go to professionals. So you're going to put $2.5 million into the professional side.
I have to ask because out there that are not going to be totally happy. Depending on way or what's wrong with the old one. So I think at some point, so thank you.
I'm just thinking about, kind of what you said there, kind of what I said earlier. I think the biggest thing to say is if you're ever going to go forward and replace this 1969 building, and the fact that we keep hearing about go to the next floor, because that was, I guess, was the original plan, you can't park the people. And then I still think if you're going to put another floor, you're putting another floor on top of issues like that. I think that we need to find out. Maybe they say, hey, you can do this, and maybe they say you can't. But I think that at some point, we got to take the first step. And I'm not saying, and nobody's saying that, well, we're moving right along here. Just trying to get an idea where we're moving. Member Stokel.
Yep, thank you. Just to clarify, so with this study, they will primarily be looking at the footprint and sizing. So, and then at that point, we would kind of look at the space within the city of Titusville, or would they be proposing locations as well?
They're going to develop a generic site. So what in discussion with them is they're going to give us options of what footprint we would have to fit in. That would incorporate vertical, so parking garages, vertical buildings, spreading it out into multiple buildings. They're going to give us some options, but it's going to be done in generic site format. So what they're not being tasked to do is going and finding a property. They will put architectural renderings to what they're doing so that you'll have a feel when they come to council. They're going to show you the architectural picture that goes with what they propose. So if they propose a multi-story with a garage, they're going to show you the look, but it'll be set in generic standpoint where they'll tell us, you need to go find 15 acres, you need whatever, generic.
Okay.
So then we can have, when the conversation's had about the next steps, then we go find, like with another consultant to, this is a site-specific look with that building, put it there.
Okay.
But this is not part of their tasking. They're generically going to put together the building on any site as if it's a blank tape.
Okay. And then is there a reason we didn't put this out to bid? I know we've used other engineering consulting services before as well. So is there a reason we went with this one?
AECOM had just done almost the identical scope on a lesser scale for the water resources building on Garden Street. So they had just developed a space needs study, an architectural rendering of what the building improvement would be. So the opportunity was there. When you go out to CCNA, another consultant, it's a 1.5-year process. So by going to an existing consultant we had, we were able to shave at least a year off procurement for this step. So while it is a small step forward, it is a step forward that we got there a year sooner. Economies of scale, prices go up, so that's some savings. But they had done a very similar project on a lesser scale for water. So that's how we got to AECOM.
But we don't have any other competitive prices to know whether or not where this ranks potentially in other bids.
Well, in the CCNA world, there is no such thing as competitive pricing because they negotiate, all consultants are deemed equal. They negotiate rates upon what they're paying their employees. So we couldn't have put out a bid that said, give me a price number only. They would have to come back with, here's our scope of services. They'll present the company. We pick the company, then we negotiate their fee. So we never would have had, like we would with paving, where there's five consultants ranked by price. They're not allowed to do that. The statute protects them. They have to be negotiated with the most responsive and selected vendor.
So our point system looks different for who we were to pick if we were to put it out for bid? Not based on pricing?
This procurement is a different type of procurement.
There would not have been a price proposal.
Okay.
We would have selected a consultant, and we did. Water did. They had a proposal, say 12 resources. We do it for our side too. They picked them ranked upon their experience, their staffing, their availability hours.
Okay.
Then when they're selected, they shortlisted to 3. I think they actually have 3 carrying consultants right now. Then those 3 consultants are individually negotiated with to set rates for each position. So that's the only part of the pricing. They don't ever price out the full task in a comparison format. They're not allowed to. They're not allowed to ask them to.
These presentations.
And Richard could correct me. I think above 50,000, you're not allowed to compete on price when engineering a professional consultant.
Okay. Thank you.
To follow up without talking bids, and again, following up with answering the citizens, and I'd said this in our meeting, city manager, the concern won't be that we're taking the first step. The concern won't be that there's a thought about what can we do with a 1969 building or maybe move on from a 1969 building. The concern would be that the first step is $300,000 plus. That's going to be the concern. So what we really need, and I get the, and I thought the same process, but apparently there's no such thing as bids with this. How do we know that's a competitive thing? How do we know that, you know, and I know that I've got several cities and city halls that this company did. I think city manager, you talked to me and we looked at the book and saw several of them. What were their costs? I mean, I just want to make sure I can say that this is a fair price and this is as good as it gets.
I'm comfortable that the pricing is fair for the level of project you're doing. Like I said, you take the final build cost at $50 million. On a small project, we put 10% towards the professionals, so that's $5 million. Size goes down, it's probably $2.5 million, so you're allocating another 10% of that or so to this step. So this is in the realm. I will say there probably is, depending on what they're negotiated, they're capped on their overhead and things. Our purchasing staff is really good at capping consultants. They don't like it, but they are capped on what they can multiply their employees by. So I'm comfortable that what they put together. We are paying not a premium, but they have brought in architects whose specialties are in public safety. So they know how to build police headquarters. And this is unique because most times you may have Port Orange that builds a police headquarters only. You don't have a lot of places who build a government complex that incorporates emergency operations center. So we are paying for a lot of specialty pieces that may not have been there in just a city hall. So I think that probably raised some of the complexity. But I think the pricing is the appropriate level for what we're looking at as end product. If they'd come in at 700,000, they have a conversation about going out, looking at another consultant because they overpriced themselves. But I think they've come in at what would be appropriate for the magnitude of construction we're looking at in the future.
Okay. Member Jordan.
Thank you. I'm actually not uncomfortable with this price. I know what things cost for sure. And as we just finished building our structure at the school, I can tell you this is reasonable for sure. I'm certainly excited that we are actually doing something proactively for the future. And I can guarantee you I won't be around when this thing is being built, but I certainly would like to be part of starting this process and trying to give people a vision of where we as citizens are going to be going for our city. As I said before, this is the oldest government facility that City Hall that we have in Brevard County. And we also need to recognize that we are still the county seat. A lot of things have moved away from here, but we are the county seat for sure. And I think the citizens, as an experience I've had with building another huge structure, which was the hospital, history will show that we actually had multiple citizens come to this facility, and some protested and some were happy, but it was a nice circus that we had here for sure. And a lot of them said that they were born at the old parish hospital and they don't want it torn down. And what they didn't realize, as with this one, the basement was where the pharmacy was. It was wet down there. It was an extremely old building. And the same naysayers who said they didn't want it, they're the same ones who are using the facility today, and they're very proud and happy to say this is our hospital. So, sometimes you have to make decisions. A lot of times we have to make decisions that you're not going to get every citizen to agree with. And also, I always recognize the fact that we're not up here by chance. We're here to be leaders, and sometimes those who are following us or put us in this position, when they first voted for us, they loved us to death. But when we made that first vote that they didn't like, then we were the biggest idiots in the world. That's just the nature of this business. So I'm all for doing the right thing as long as our hearts are trying to do the best we can for the citizens, and that's what I will always vote on for sure. Not worrying about the fear of somebody coming and telling me I'm an idiot, because I don't run my life based on what somebody else thinks about me unless it's my wife. And other than that, I just try to do my best and do the right thing. So my hats is off to the manager and staff for actually being bold enough to do something like this, even though council is the one that agreed that we need to start the process. Because if we never start this process, it will never happen in Titusville. And I keep going to Cape Canaveral, and I look at what they did, which I think is a funny looking building. It's too close to the sidewalk, in my opinion. But they got it done, and I'm sure there were some naysayers there. So I think it's our time for sure. And actually, I'm a fan of older homes and rebuilding older homes, because you want to maintain that history, if you will, and maintain the quality of, especially the facade. I don't see anything about this building I like at all, to tell you the truth. You don't need to maintain this history, in my mind. We need to get into modern times and make our, not only citizens happy, but also make our employees happy. Because in these days where a lot of employees, they don't stay around a long time. They need to go some other place, and they always look at the employee to see, what have you done for me lately? And we have actually sacrificed our employees as far as position and where they sit. You are number one. You never complain about where you are, but that's a pretty bad building, if you ask me, for sure. So I wouldn't want to work there, but I appreciate what you do and what your employees sacrifice for the city for it, but we need to start thinking about what we can do for you all to make the environment better for everyone.
Would you like to make a motion?
I can do that if you let, oh, I've already got the button there. So I move that we approve work order, I guess it's 12B, work order for Titusville Government Center in the amount of $361,922. Is that not to exceed, or that's the number?
Well, that's the number. That's
That's
the
the
minimum. If they bill us less hours.
Okay, so $361,920.
I have a motion. I need a second. I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Robinson?
Yes.
Yes.
Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor? Member Stokel?
Yes.
Passes unanimously. City Manager, we move to C.
Yes, sir. Mayor, if I could just, our executive leadership team, when we had discussions about this, I can tell you across the board, there's great excitement about just taking the first step.
I agree.
Because our employees really, I believe, deserve better. And our executive leadership team spent a great deal of time, and we've got employees now that are already picking out their furniture for their new building. So,
Oh, boy.
but it's just really encouraging that this council's taken that first step to help us to make our work environment better.
And as
So I
I
appreciate
said,
that.
and it's a journey. And nobody here is saying that next week we're going to be putting shovels in our hand, but every journey is a first step, and I'm excited that the employees are excited. So thank you.
Yes, sir. On to item 12C is advisability for the allocation of American Rescue Plan Act funding for the community development initiatives, which is housing and small business. Staff is requesting advisability to proceed with investing and establishing parameters for allocating funds to residents through housing and utilities assistance payments to small businesses by way of grants. Details of such as a maximum payment and grant amounts, as well as permitted uses of funds, which will be determined as guidance is issued by the federal government. And this is our first step. We think we can get after these two programs fairly rapidly. Again, just a quick review of the government money. We will have 2 installments over 3 years. We want to get the money out to our citizens in the first phase within small business and housing and utilities assistance as within the law. We expect some more guidance from Treasury as well as the state as these programs come forward. So we will bring these programs forward when they're ready to become back to council. Peggy's here to answer any questions that you have.
Ms. Busaka, any report or anything you want to say? Any questions? Member Robinson?
Yeah, yes, Peggy. When I highlighted all of your utilities assistance and so forth and small business loan, do you have any idea what that's going to look like? Is it going to be startup money for small businesses? Is it going to be housing assistance to renovate? What do you have any? I know that it's just in the beginning stage, but I just kind of want to see where your thoughts are on that. What it's going to look like.
We actually have some money that's already been allocated for rental in previous CARES Act and those kind of things. We're hoping that we can help pay mortgages with this particular fund. In addition to that, our previous CARES Act would not allow us to pay water bills. So we're hoping that we can do that.
That's paying yourself.
Yes, we're hoping that we can do that. We're not sure about any of that yet when it comes to the housing portion, because we have received absolutely no guidance on that at all. When it came to businesses, one of the issues that we know that council is very concerned about is the grease interceptors, which are very expensive. So one of our thoughts is that we could put grants together for restaurants that currently have undersized grease interceptors, and we're getting a list of those so that we know which of those are, so we'd have some idea of how much money we would want to allocate for that.
Wasn't that about $40,000 to put?
It depends on the size.
I think the number we were going to use is about 20.
Yeah.
Okay.
But some of them can be as high as 40. So we're investigating that. In addition to that, there have been some other businesses that other business programs that include grants to assist people in various needs that they have. We've been working with the downtown merchants as well as the chamber to determine exactly what kind of needs the local businesses have. But we didn't want to get too far ahead of council. That's why we're asking for this advisability. But I know that staff would be very open if you have people who've come to you and said, these are the kind of needs that we have, especially in the business world. We would be delighted to hear what those are.
Well, and do you think there's anything that relates to OJT when it comes to starting up businesses and so forth? You don't think it's going to be put in?
I do not know, but we will certainly investigate that. Thank you for that idea.
Yeah, and back to the grease interceptor, part of the money can be used for water and infrastructure. So we're thinking small business grant and grease interceptor, the two are perfect together as meeting the criteria.
So I understand, all we're doing is giving advisability to proceed with investigating and establishing parameters.
Yes, sir.
So we're simply voting, not voting.
Yes, sir.
Well, we are voting to allow you to move forward.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to get a motion in that way.
So moved.
We have one card.
There's- Okay, Officer Jackson, come on, no.
He changed his mind.
Hi, for the record, Nathan Slusher at 860 Allendale Street. I just want to reiterate, I know you weren't here at the last meeting. I don't think so when we talked about our idea for the rescue plan money. For small businesses, we had suggested taking the money and paying the legal fees for business startups instead of just passing out grants. Instead of just saying, here's, like county did $5,000 grants, here's $5,000, here's $5,000, here's $5,000. Instead, we as a city pay their legal side so they can get started.
We have already, the council's already provided advisability to move forward with business tax receipt fire fees. So that's already underway.
I'm talking more, I was talking more than just that, not just BTRs for the.
I will write that down. I do not know if that is an eligible expense at this time.
I don't know if it's eligible either. I just thought if it's a good idea that can help our citizens get a head start with small businesses, more of an investment into the community and less of just passing out like we saw at county level.
Thank you. All right, where were we?
You were calling on me to say something.
I was calling on you to say something. Go ahead, you always have something.
Just as a reminder, I think Councilman Roberts' son was. I'm sleepy.
Robert's son.
Robert's son. He was alluding to the fact about mortgage help and rental help. The county actually has a website, and what I've been told is nobody's applying for it. So we need to make sure that the citizens know they need to go to that website and apply for that rental thing.
Of Titusville thinks that they don't have access to it because
they do.
There's a lot of things in that business that you can do in MIM, but you can't get access to here in Titusville. In fact, first.
I think they need to try because it's out there and apparently there's a lot of money. So just everybody needs to try again if they need some help for sure. But do you need a motion for the advisability? Okay, I move that we approve the advisability for the allocation of American Rescue Plan Act funding for community development initiatives, housing, small business.
And I need a second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Member Jordan?
Yes.
Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nelson? Member Stokel?
Yes.
Member Robinson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. We move to D.
Item D is Resolution 13, 2021, Code Enforcement Lien Amnesty Program. Given the recent health crisis related to COVID-19, the City of Titusville has realized that these liens are potentially a burden for property owners and they should be given some relief so that they may be able to use the equity in their property to sustain themselves during these times. In order to incentivize code compliance and settle outstanding liens, A code enforcement lien amnesty program is proposed for your consideration.
Here she is.
Hello, Mayor and Council.
10:15. You have anything you want to add or just,
I presented a proposed resolution
Right.
that says 5% of the outstanding code enforcement fine, not to exceed $1,500, would be the amount that we would collect. And that's the only thing that I would make sure that you are aware of before we proceed with this program. It will begin after the resolution is signed and last for at least 1 year.
well, I would say off the top of my head, it's an outstanding initiative. And I appreciate your hard effort on this. I really do.
Thank you.
Member Jordan.
Oh, mine, like was said, I'll make the motion but you gotta ask for the public
No,
first.
we'll
right?
ask for cards.
Okay, then.
And I see no more council members. So with that, are there cards? Okay, there's no cards now. Member Jordan?
Mr. Mayor and Council, I move that we approve resolution number 13, 2021, Court Enforcement Lien Amnesty Program.
Second, looking for a
Second.
second. I have a second from Vice Mayor. Roll call vote.
Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nelson? Stokel?
Yes.
Member Robinson?
Yes.
Member Jordan?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. We move to petitions and requests from the public present. He's back.
Okay, for the record, Nathan Slusher at 860 Allendale Street. I just want to report that I went this week and discussed with some local businesses about the alcohol sales, how it's affecting them. I wanted some feedback and I wanted to kind of get in the trenches and get some knowledge on what they see hand to hand. I found out 7-Eleven has informed us that they're just sending everybody to MIMS because they can buy alcohol in MIMS after hours. And they did inform me that they do actually, 7-Eleven does have business late at night. They do sell alcohol until 2 o'clock when they're allotted. And then after 2 o'clock, they can actually get work done, she says. So that was funny, but that tells me that there is definitely a need there. Cumberland Farms has said it dramatically hurts them. Every Cumberland Farms cannot sell until 1 p.m. on Sundays, and they're losing it early morning on the weekend. And that, I talked to Cumberland Farms at US 1 and 50, Garden Street and 1, and Hickory Hills. I went to all of them. I talked to Jill, Tammy, and, gosh, I'm so sorry, I forgot her name. So Cumberland Farms is hurting. The police chief, John Lau, actually told me Walmart stopped him from buying alcohol. He didn't realize, and so he was stopped. Walmart can't even sell alcohol at the allotted times. So that was some of the info I wanted to get across. I know I talked to the attorney beforehand to make sure we didn't push any, what's the word I'm looking for here? Oh. Boundaries, thank you. Yes. And in order to move forward to have a discussion, it has to have a motion. So that was when I wanted to get the point across. Somebody would have to request to have that ordinance hearing.
It's actually on our agenda. It's on our agenda.
Correct. In my report,
The report.
you have it for information purposes. It wasn't an action item. That's why it's
Right.
under petitions and requests, asking you to make it an action item in the
Yes.
future, is my understanding.
I had brought it to him and said, I don't want to interrupt your time, but how do we do this? And he said it does have to be made an action item. So I just want to make sure that was brought up and clear.
Okay, thank you. City Manager, did you do any investigating that I'd like to hear about? Did you go to some stores and try to buy some?
I did.
And you didn't have any problem?
I didn't.
Did they card you?
I wish they would have.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate that. So because we're going to probably get something on this here in just a second. So Mayor and Council reports, you have especially at 10:20, you have my report. Council, I hope we have yours too. Yeah. Thank you. Any,
Can I?
dang. There you go.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm back to my crazy ideas. But it's not totally crazy, okay? Not totally crazy, because I was thinking.
You said at 10:20, they're all crazy.
Well, yeah, that's true. So, we were talking about job training programs. And that's something that every time we have a community meeting, it gets brought up that we need job training programs. And one of the things that bothered me that East Florida up here, college programs seem smaller. You know, and if you're Melbourne, the college programs get bigger and bigger. And somebody pointed out to me that if you wanted to go to the law enforcement academy or the firefighters academy, or you wanted to be a CNA, you had to travel to Melbourne or Palm Bay. And I thought, that's really crazy. So my question to you guys is, if we found a building that would be appropriate and we had a way to pay for it, okay? Yeah. Because I'm not coming to you to ask you to pay for it. So that part would be good. But would it be possible to turn around? Would you guys be interested in maybe putting it out for bid at some of the different schools in the area to see if they would come in and run it?
What do you mean by schools in the area?
Trading.
Do we have trade schools in the area?
We have trade schools.
What
in
are they
the area.
called?
I can't remember. There were
Okay,
about
well, and that's
50.
because I'm not familiar with them, because my first thought, and I thought where you were going and you didn't, and I'm going to say this should be our first step, is I was thinking if that's the case, and I don't know that's the case, and if we find out that's the case, that our offerings in the Titusville are shrinking, I would think it would be wise for us, before we start trying to recreate the wheel or reinvent the wheel, when EFSC certainly has the wheels to do what we need them to do, but suddenly they're not doing it as much. I'd like to have a, I can't say a group because we can't meet as a group, but I'd like to have a coalition of people meet with them, or maybe just me, or maybe just somebody, maybe Member Stokel take the lead and kind of have that discussion first of why are we losing what we had? We're growing up here. We're not shrinking. It's not as though there's fewer people. So my first thing, if I was dealing with educational aspects that we're losing, as I have done with the school board on occasion, why are we losing this? We have the facility to have this. We have the teachers to have this. Why are we losing this before I go to let's buy a building and put ourselves? That's the first thing I would do, but then I would say we could look at your idea.
What I plan on doing is talking to, I will tell you that about a year and a half ago, I talked to some.
Ma'am, could we get you a little closer to the microphone? Thank
Okay.
you.
I talked to somebody at Eastern Florida who will remain nameless, and he was begging for a program up here, and Eastern Florida was spending millions on dormitories, and he could not get that $100,000. And when I look at it, and I'm like, the programs aren't up here. I talked to one of the people at Eastern Florida, and their comment was, your kids can come to Cocoa or Melbourne. And I'm like, our kids, not all of them have that ability to drive down county or ride the bus down county for the next 2-3 years. So, yes, I do want to talk to Eastern Florida. I do want to talk to Misty Belford.
I do too.
But on the other hand, I'm sitting here going, as I'm going forward, I'm like, I think I know how to do this. I don't totally know how to do this. But is it something that the city could be involved in, and that they could take possession of a facility and basically put it out for proposal to trade schools and say, take them run it?
I think we go, the first thing is we talk to, Titusville has the CNA program. We graduate as many as 30 or 40 CNA certified nurses every year from Titusville High School. We have we have some things that aren't as pertinent, but we have an automotive program, and you can become ASE certified at Titusville High School. I don't know why we can't possibly run some of those where if it's, and that's a good, because sometimes we get a bad rap in our north area for not having that, because then you go to astronaut, you've got welding certifications.
Right.
So we have an awful lot of things going on in Brevard Public Schools that is, that's good. We're sending people out ready to go work. But for those who missed that boat and need more help that way, again, I don't know why we couldn't possibly lean and have a collaboration with Brevard Public Schools for, the old night school deals and use their facility. And I'm not sure how that all works. But when you try to do it by yourself, just the word certifications gets to be a big deal. And then, the inspections of any building you have and the codes you've got to meet. I hate to go through all that when we've already got it at 2 high schools in the north area that we're sending out CNA nurses, we're sending out ASE certified mechanics, we're sending out certified welders. I'd like to maybe get with Misty Belford and talk to her. And then again, Member Stokel can probably guide us on this. What's going on at EFSC in the north area that we're losing whatever was going on there that's not going on now? I'd like those angles first before we try to, again, if I was to use an analogy, it's kind of like we use North Brevard Parks and Recreation to do the things they do because they're prepared to do that. The last thing we want to do is make a rec department in the city of Titusville. So, and I'm just using that as an analogy because the last thing we want to do perhaps is get involved in trying to be have a vocational department in the city if we've already got them all around us. So I'm not saying that they would cooperate with us, but I'd like to try that first. That's just my opinion.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you because once the kids turn 18, they don't have that opportunity to get those certifications from the high school.
For the most part, you're 18 when you graduate, so you did something. You're in adult ed or something. I haven't heard on the EFSC side what they had that they don't have and why we don't have that offering anymore. So, I'd like to hear that before we say, let's open a Oak Tech program here. I think city manager is saying, oh boy, here we go.
Certification programs, education programs are really not one of our core functions. It would probably, we would rely on those that do it.
Right.
And I think if you have a concern, we could certainly take that concern to those that actually do that. Say you have a concern. Needs analysis. I don't know why Eastern Florida is not
providing.
They
don't seem to be.
My guess is there's a needs analysis that you're not getting the student load that you need in order to provide the program. So for the city to have an additional program that would compete with you is probably not the right way to go.
Yeah, I think that the issue is, and for whatever reason, they just weren't as popular as Melbourne campus, for instance, and everybody's saying, yeah, I mean, I work at the Cocoa campus, and we're saying, hey, why, a lot of stuff is getting invested into Melbourne, but Melbourne's also been growing, and that's way above my level, but I would be interested potentially in some type of partnership or something if that is an option. I just don't know if we're there yet, and kind of what the city manager was saying, based on what, people at Eastern Florida have studied and done. I think that, sure the gentleman you talked to, it was above his level as well, that, we want it in this area. It's just whether or not the need is showing, it have that at this point. I think we're growing. I think that I'm hopeful that we'll be able to bring it back up because I've seen that campus go through some changes, but I just don't know if we're
Now,
there.
the city does participate in the EDC's certified technician program.
Technicians.
We provide scholarships, and I think Ms. Weatherman is wanting to expand the program a little bit more, so there may be a way that we can financially assist in that, which would be a good return for the CPT program.
I do want more answers, without a doubt. And we discussed the option, and actually there was sort of a committee of people that were interested in doing this. So the question to me was, what entity could take something like this, not run it, but manage the property.
Again, I'm not sure how the city would be involved with that, as it's really not one of our core functions. And we could certainly take it to your request to the different entities that have been described and say that we have a council member that has a concern.
Oh, I'm planning on doing that part, because I am concerned, because I look at the kids walking the streets and I'm like, you know, you could say it's not one of our core functions. I will tell you there is at least one city attorney that says he believes it is. But either way, I look at it and go, how do we say that providing car seats to mothers as a core function? How do we say?
As a grant function, ma'am.
Well, how do we say having the lady that does the clown that works for the fire department? How do we turn around?
That's part of our pub ed, our public education,
Okay.
and that is a core function of the fire department.
I'm not sure I agree with this guy. I just don't.
Ma'am, I'm not going to argue with you.
I'm not going to argue. But I'm
A
just
core
saying I'm
function
not sure.
of both the police and fire is public engagement.
Okay. Well, I realize I'm not arguing with you. I'm just sort of, yes, I'm an attorney and I'm just.
You have a passion, and that's good. And all I'm saying, and I'm not saying no to anything, I'm simply saying I want to talk to BCC.
Yeah.
I apologize.
That's okay.
EFSC, and find out what happened before but if they don't give us the answers that we need and we don't get help there, well, then we go back and then talk about some of the other options that you're saying. Because they should be, should be part of their function. And especially, as you know, the 18-year-olds who suddenly can't get their ASE at Titusville High School because they missed it, whatever reason. So where can they catch that next bus would be EFSC in Titusville. I would not mind talking to them and saying and I don't know, maybe you're the one to do
It's also
that.
been a very challenging year for us with
Yes.
enrollment and COVID and.
Well, that's a good point.
And we
That's a very
aren't
good point.
able to raise our tuition at all because of the state parameters. So I know that Eastern Florida is in a tough situation with how to allocate the funding they have as well. So I don't know if it's necessarily they don't want to do it. It's just where do we have the dollars? What can be allocated?
And that's a
where?
very good point. I'm glad you said that because it could certainly come across that we're shooting at EFSC.
Yeah.
I don't even know what they offered that they don't now. I know there used to be some air conditioning classes out there and a lot of vocational back in the day. I can't tell you I know what's out there now, but I'd like to learn and see where they can help us before we say, let's buy a building and all that. But I'm not saying if they're not going to help us, and I'm not saying they won't, if they can't help us is a better word. I love EFSC, make that very clear. I do. I mean, I really do. They have a real purpose for us. But man, if there's a real hole in the ground here that people are falling through, I'm hoping that they can assist us figure that out. That's all. That's 10:30.
Okay.
I have some. Yeah, and I have
sorry.
I had some stuff.
Yeah, we'll need a motion to continue beyond
Motion to
10:30.
extend the time to,
I'll
I
make
move
that
to,
motion.
yep, okay, I second.
Okay.
Joanne motions, I
let's just
second.
say all in favor? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, my turn. Okay, a couple things. One, I just want to clarify, moving forward, when we do consent agenda items, that if we're just asking questions for clarification purposes, it will not be a separate card. If we did want to open it up for discussion, then potentially we would need to open it up for more. So I just want to make that clear because I don't want anybody to feel like we don't want to pull an agenda item because we're going to open it up for that. So
I guess I'd like clarification and we only got 8 minutes left, so be careful. But I'm glad you brought that back up because I definitely was feeling we had a curveball going on there. I really felt like I've pulled agenda items in the past and didn't have to vote on them. Now, because we discussed them, I mean, what level of discussion does it have to be before we have to have a vote? I don't know that, I really think a lot of us were a little surprised by that.
yes.
I can just tell you that the rules say if the item is pulled for discussion, then the public gets an extra 3 minutes on that item.
That gets real complicated with our 10-minute rule. I think we almost need to readdress that.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Or
Because
readdress
all of a
that
sudden,
rule.
the guy somebody who may have, anybody who may have 10 minutes, suddenly anything we pull could now turn it in. If we have 3 things pulled, now we're up to 20 minutes, basically.
Correct, because consent agenda is treated as one item, and it's usually non-controversial, mundane type of business items. But if there's an item that council feels is not that way, that actually merits discussion, and what you're saying is maybe that's not a consent item. Maybe we need to pull that for deeper discussion. And recognizing that the time for consent isn't 3 minutes an item, it's 10 minutes total overall, even if you have 30 items. It's because it's that mundane business type of item. So what the rule recognizes is council may think this is worthy of discussion, so they can give the public additional time to address that item.
But we can change that rule because I feel
This
like.
is your rule.
Right. So I feel like as long as they have that 10 minutes, they're still getting their right to speak. So I don't feel an additional 3 minutes is warranted.
But to also answer your question, that's only if it's pulled for discussion. We've had situations where a council member doesn't pull an item, but they'd say, on item A, I have a question. Can you explain this to me? And you haven't pulled because when you're pulling it, in my opinion, you're taking it off consent for discussion. And that's what
That's the best way to look at it is consent is one item. So if a council member pulls it for discussion, it's no longer part of consent. It's an agenda item.
That's clarification. I must admit, because I never knew the difference. If I had a question on a consent agenda item, how could I ask it without pulling it?
So exactly what Member Stokel did with item D.
After we discussed it,
She had a
clarified it, so we didn't have
discussion
to do
item.
that. Because she was going to do the same thing we were doing.
Right.
Certainly.
Now, if she would have taken that and said, I would like to pull item D for discussion, and it wouldn't be just questions, she would want to deliberate with council, and that is no longer a part of consent agenda, it is a separate agenda item.
So you're still pulling it, because I know in the past I've pulled a consent agenda item, very few, but I have, and said, I don't understand this, what's this? Then I got the explanation, said, okay, we're good.
Right, but you didn't discuss it. It wasn't a discussion. All you were asking is staff for clarification.
So our wording.
I don't think you pull it for clarification. You'd ask for clarification. Or you pull it off consent for
Right.
discussion.
That's the key thing is when you say I'm pulling the item, that's when I ask specifically if a council member would like to pull an item off of consent. When I say that, I'm asking you if you want to make it an agenda item and it's no longer part of consent. If you have clarification or questions on any of the agenda item, consent agenda, staff is certainly here to answer those questions. That's why they all sit there during consent. They're available to answer questions that you may have for clarification.
Vice Mayor.
So I'm thinking if you just say, I have a point I'd like to clarify without saying, I want to pull it. I think when you leave out the words, I want to pull it, you're okay.
So do we, when I say I do have a question, when you ask, does any council member want to pull an item, do I just stay quiet during that time? Or do I say, I'll have a question but
You
not
could
needed
say,
to
I
pull?
don't want to pull an item, but I have a question on item A
Okay.
I'd like answered.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
because it's
perfect.
never been pointed out, it's never been addressed, does anybody have a question on any of the items? It's always says, does anybody want to pull?
Right.
And when I pulled one, that's when I asked my question.
Now we'll
And
clarify you don't want to pull it for discussion, but you may want clarification.
Okay.
on
that's
it.
news.
Okay. I think I got that one. Okay, second
Yeah,
thing.
just to think of consent as one item. So if you're pulling something out of that, then it becomes an agenda item.
I'll be quiet.
Okay. Second thing is I would like, I know we keep doing some staff presentations. I would like to see a presentation or maybe a report on the baffle boxes. I know we talk about them and approve them a lot, and they're expensive. But I've also had some citizens reach out to me concerning the Main Street baffle box specifically, especially after a storm. Lots of debris, lots of yard debris there. And I don't know if we need to address how often they're cleaned, how much money that costs. So when we're going into the budget process, I'd like to kind of have some of that information to properly plan for that. And then the last thing, I was just curious, Mayor, about this audit exit interview you did. That just looked interesting.
Say again now?
You had on here audit exit interview.
Oh,
Was that with the city or
that's
something?
just what we all did. That's what you did, that was the audit exit.
Oh, the exit. Okay, sorry. I was thinking about like the exit interview when somebody leaves.
I mean, I'm running around all
I'm
over
like,
town
what?
trying to think, what did I do in an audit?
Sorry,
Who did I do that
sorry,
with?
sorry. Okay, that's all. That's all.
All right,
I'm
we
done.
have 2 minutes. We're done? Yeah.
I have no items for action. I just have some information items in their calendar events. And the city attorney does have 2 items.
Okay. You got a minute and a half each.
Yeah. Yes, sir. The first item I have is item 16A, which is the extended hours of operation permit for alcohol sales. That was brought up at your last meeting.
Right.
Council wanted some more information of what the permit process is, what the hours are. I provided that in your agenda package. Simply here to answer questions. If you have questions about the extended hours of operation permit and what that's about, I know you had a citizen petitions request. I think would like you to make that an agenda item to discuss further. But again, this is just for information, council to pleasure and any direction you want to provide or not provide.
Anything else?
Not on that, unless you have questions.
Good on that.
Next item is I provide you was the opioid litigation. From the Attorney General's office, I've provided that into your package. The state has been negotiating with the defendants in the opioid litigation. The state believes that the proposed settlement is reasonable. Any funds we receive, and there in the back you'll see different scenarios of scenario 1, 2, and 3. And we're highlighted in that package about the proceeds we would receive under those scenarios. All funds would have to be used to abate and resolve the opioid epidemic. The allocation of funds is based upon a model which considers the amount of opioids shipped to the county, the number of opioid deaths in the county, and the number of people who have suffered opioid use disorders in the county, historical data showing opioid-related expenses as well. So they use this formula to try and determine for the cities and the counties your allocation of funds. Again, the proposed MOU and resolution is in your package. Attorney General's office would like the cities to consider and vote on that in the next 60 days. So our plan is, if you're interested, to bring that to you as an agenda item the next 30 to 60 days to vote on that MOU resolution to resolve that.
Is that it?
Yes, sir.
And I believe we have sent you a registration to attend a question and answer thing. And we respectfully request that you sign up, if you, in fact, you would like to attend that, sign up as an observer, not a participant. In case more than one of you are a part of that, that would be a sunshine problem.
Because it's being in that business for a number of years, when you get into, you receive those dollars, and as you have just stated, those dollars are going to have to be used to help those that's in that particular situation. And then you're going to, I'm interested in the Q&A because I want to ask some questions. I'm already signed up for that. Because when you make those decisions for the city to get those dollars, it's going to open a bag of worms. Big bag of worms.
On you.
Bag of worms.
Because I'm not real familiar with that.
Everybody.
Not real familiar. So with that, I appreciate the robust discussion tonight that took us to almost 11:45. But anyway, very good meeting. I appreciate your efforts. Meeting adjourned.